And seems like we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to, well, whatever this is. This is a stream. So, yeah, I'm just going to hop in on that. I'm going to hop in real quick. Hope everyone's doing well. I don't see anyone in yet, so I'm just going to hop in on the end here. All right, stop that. All right, going to just promote this around on the interwebs. So if you guys want to come see me, I'll be here. Right. There we go. Hopefully everyone's doing well. It's lit book reviews. Just started reading comics. That's pretty cool. Cool. All right. I got the eyeballs. I did the eyeball meme. There we go. All right. There we go. Interesting. Literary Apothecary. Just read Suttree recently. It's a good book. Also, sorry if I can't see you guys' messages yet. Hello, Tharnal. Alicia, how you doing? Chadia, how you doing? Sorry if I'm not answering right at the moment. I am just spreading this around the internet. Also, I am sad to say I enjoy having Raph here. Or well, I don't know what Raph's doing, but I know he's been out of town, so I don't know if he'll show up today. Unless he wants to show up. And I mean, I'm always fine with having Raph here with me. It's just I think he's out of town though. You feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If there's somebody closer to Raph who, and shit, it's on the fireside. There we go. So yeah, when Matt doesn't have his show, I'm like, well, he has a bit of a void there, so I'm gonna hop in. I'm kidding, slightly, but yeah. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Like I said, this is open invite, so if anyone wants to come in and hang out for a while with me, that's fine. But if you guys just want to hear me yap for a little while, that's fine too. Really not too picky. So yeah, let me just do that. All right, now I'm sharing on my server. Cool. All right. Oh dear. There we go. Tired but hanging in. How are you? I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty good. Jody says send him the link. I do see he is on Discord, so I might do that. But yeah, just give me a sec here. There we go. I did share it on my Discord, so if anyone is on my Discord and friendly with me and want to join me on here, go on ahead because I will be here. Again, sorry if I'm not responding right away. Just spreading this around real quick. Okay, I'm almost done with that, so I'll be able to see you guys' comments. All right, and we're good. Okay, let's do this. Hello, everyone. Too many bell dings. Calm down. Sorry, Ori. You guys are good people. Anyway, hello, everyone. Glad to be here. You know what? Since I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna. Well, I have to let everyone know what I'm doing. Actually, hold on. I know what I'm doing. Oh, I got something. Seems you're having fun so far, is what Raph just told me on the. All right, so let's be like, I'm streaming today. I don't know if out of town, but if you're not, here's the link. If you can't join or don't want to, that's fine. Join or don't want to, that's fine. All right. So, I don't want to hassle Raph if he's still recovering from well, I finished Gardens of the Moon and I wrote a review of it on my Goodreads. Very mixed experience. So, yeah. Sorry, Ori, I got to let people know that this is going down. So, I wish I were like Matt or Raph. Well, I guess I technically am like Raph, and I have that very loyal cult following on YouTube, and I love you all. But sadly, I'm not like a Joanna or a Talking Story or Matt. I don't have like a bunch of people who show up right off the bat. So I gotta hustle. Guys gotta hustle, man. What am I reading? Well, that's a good question. I am reading Men at Arms by Sir Terry Pratchett. Having a lot of fun with it. It's really nice reading this after finishing Gardens of the Moon because it's it's like it feels familiar, and a Brief History of Seven Killings by Marlon James. Enjoying that quite a bit. I'll just say fair enough. Fair enough. There we go. So we might have a Raph appearance, but he says, "Oh, is he streaming right now? I thought he said he was streaming at 4. Hello, Midnight Chronicler. How you doing? Well, I am reading a little. I am reading a smaller book in Discworld. Not as complex, but very very entertaining. Oh shit, he is streaming right now. What? Well, okay. I'm just getting raw dogged over here today. My friend Aaron's streaming right now. It's his birthday, and Alan is streaming right now. So yeah, it's kind of just what's going on. Oh man, you're getting to the home stretch of Last Argument of Kings. I think those last like 100 pages are just brilliant. So good luck with that, Demodrag. Hope you're enjoying it. Hello, Ida. Glad to have you here today. What was I saying earlier? Oh yeah, we might get a Raph appearance. He just texted me. He said that he did just get back a few hours ago, but he's not sure yet. So there you go. Thanks, Ori. I appreciate you. But yeah, no, I completed Gardens of the Moon. Was very mixed on it. I'm hoping to have a conversation about it. It's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Probably in a few months from now. But I'm trying to get that together. So there you go. So yeah, and Brief History of Seven Killings is also good. It's been fun talking with Raph about that. I'm probably going to have a conversation with Raph about A Brief History of Seven Killings when I'm done with it. I just need to get in contact with them. I kind of feel bad sometimes. I ask him to come on my channel a lot, but he enjoys. I enjoy talking with him, and from all accounts, he enjoys talking with me. So it's all good. But yeah. I didn't even know there was a Le Guin prize. I guess it's not too shocking. You know, she's very well loved in the science fiction fantasy uh sphere, if you will. Mac is here. How you doing, man? Glad to hear from you, my friend. Just finished the fourth book of the R. Scott Baker books. That's great, man. Glad to hear that. Are you enjoying it? That's what I should ask. Are you enjoying it so far? Well, Tharnal, good luck with the vampire-a-thon. It's fun. I usually do my horror marathon in October, so I read a bunch of horror books during that month. I'm hoping to read The Bloody Chamber. That's really my big read I'm hoping to do for October is The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories by Angela Carter. Uh so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm really hoping it's good. Um so you're on the Allen kick, I see, because I know he's a big KJ Parker fan. Um but yeah, it's just it's a fun day. It's been, you know what, fair enough. I don't know. Oh, look at that. Alan's got a little, he's so cute. Aw, he's got a cute little potato. He's got a little potato. He got a new little guy. Little guy. Oh, is it? No, I read the first two of those. I quite liked the first one. I was kind of mad on the second one. I thought the second one wasn't as good. But it's good to know. It's good to know. Ah, yes. Been hearing a lot about this While Darkness Gathers thing, or When Darkness Gathers. What am I talking about? Uh, I actually watched him and Shay's conversation about the Adan trilogy yesterday. I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it a lot. Zachary Shea, he's got a great channel going. Not only does he talk about books, he talks about comics as well. So, he and I are leading the charge. In other words, I actually need to get him on my channel to talk about Helen of Windhorn because I convinced him to buddy read that with me. So yeah, I need to get that done soon before I forget about it. So many freaking videos I gotta do. Not enough time, people. But I'm glad we got all this gang over here, and yeah. Also, Men at Arms. I'm having a good fun. Um, I am looking forward to the Discworld Files episode on Men at Arms because there's a lot of really fun stuff in Men at Arms. So yeah, there you go. Can highly recommend checking out Jason Momoa's Chief of War and Alien Earth. Yeah, Alien Earth does look promising. I've actually heard good things about Alien Earth. I'm really hoping it's good because I'm just starved for good aliens content. My classes actually start tomorrow, but not until around the evening. So yeah, late afternoon, I should say. So yeah, it's tomorrow. It's actually my last semester, at least before I get my master's degree. So it's been fun. It's been fun. Oh, they didn't mention anything about When Darkness Gathers. So I don't know anything about that. Or they didn't mention anything about it. They did bring up some. They did bring up spoilers for the whole trilogy, though. So if you haven't read the trilogy, maybe don't watch Shay and Phillips' video. So there you go. My most recent video about underrated books on BookTube is doing pretty good right now. So thank you guys for watching and hanging out, for watching it and giving it a crack. Oh yeah, I should note for a brief history of Seven Killings, I ended up getting the audiobook. I just got like not the pre-order, but I got a deal to where I um yeah, you know what? I could do that because there's a lot of underappreciated books that aren't really talked about enough on the booktube sphere. I could do that as a series, but might hold off for a little while. I'm thinking about making a video soon about authors I'd like to get into before too long. So hopefully I'll do that soon. Hello, John. How you doing? Saw your comment on my recent poll that I put up about Lonesome Dove. Oh man, that's sorry. Just there we go. But yeah, hopefully everyone's doing well. Um, glad to have a nice gathering here. Even though Alan's like, you know what, I'm gonna raw dog my boy Britton here. I'm just kidding, by the way. Me and Alan are only acquainted through because I'm on his Discord server, and he's always been nice to me. I've talked with him a couple times. Playing any games these days? I have been playing a couple. I've been playing a lot of GTA 5 recently. Just been kind of bored and playing that. Haven't really been doing a lot of um new games though. I did start the System Shock remake, but I stopped that for a little while. Probably I'll get back to it again at some point soon. Um I was listening to a couple podcasts yesterday. My friend Ori sent me a couple of things because he's like, I think you've been he's because apparently there was a recent stream, or not a stream, it was a recent like podcast talking about Perdido Street Station. They actually had China Mieville on. I'm like, I gotta check that out. So thank you, Ori, for sharing that. Um yeah. Oh yeah, I've beaten the game. I've just I'm just kind of farting around and doing stuff like hunting and driving around the map and shooting people. Occasionally shooting people. I don't shoot people all the time on there. Yes, I have. It's a great book. And The Scar is also a very good book. I'm actually wanting to reread. Um, I'm actually wanting to reread The Scar at some point in the near future because it's one of those books. I liked it when I read it. I still enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a great book, but I was kind of let down after just that raw, unhinged creativity that like Perdido Street Station had. But I really liked um um but it's one that's stayed in my mind more and more that more I think about it. It's gotten better the more that I've thought about it, and more if I've really considered it. Um, it's definitely one I'd like to read again at some point. Um, but yeah, no. Back to Perdido though. Perdido Street Station is a really good book, and I think people should go read it, especially if you like something different. If you're kind of burned out on the normal kind of epic fantasy, if you will. Perdido Street Station's one that'll just kind of be like a shot to the veins. It's been kind of interesting. Perdido Street Station's gotten a lot of attention recently, at least in the like book world, because like Folio Society just recently put out an edition, and like Mieville did an afterword kind of talking about it. Broken Bindings put out the Baz Lag trilogy and some of his other books, which that's the only like Broken Binding I've been tempted to pick up was the Baz Lag books because they look like some really beautiful copies. So yeah, I don't know if they're still selling them. I hope so, but maybe someday I'll get around to it, but I haven't bitten the bullet yet. Oh yeah, I was saying earlier, I got the audiobook for Brief History of Seven Killings, and I would recommend reading it that way because I was reading through it, and a lot of it is in like Jamaican patois. So if you're not really into I don't know if I'd been able to. I don't know if I would have been able to read it if I didn't have the audiobook. That's all I'll say. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, you could say that. I don't know. I haven't really read anything that. I mean, I'm sure there are other books out there that are kind of like Bazlag, but I think Bazlag is a very interesting world. It's a very unique fantasy world. I was actually talking about it in my underrated books on that not a lot of people talk about on BookTube the other day. And I kind of mentioned I said this, it's kind of like, it's sort of the anti Middle Earth in a lot of ways. Middle Earth is this very like tranquil, sometimes unless you go to like Mordor, very rural, very nostalgic, and like Bazlag is very urban. It's very dark, it's very gritty, while also having this very wildly strange mixtures of peoples and things and ideas. It's really quite fascinating. But yeah, no, I don't know if there's anything that's quite scratched that itch for me. I haven't read a lot of like new weird, aside from like Jeff Vandermeer and like China Mieville. That's about it. um yeah, I think but yeah, it is 25 years old. That's crazy. I read it in 2022 for the first time, and just as John Minton likes to say, it blew my hair back. I was just completely enamored with it. I will say it does take a minute to get going, but I do think that once it does get going, it is a ride. So yeah, there you go. See what's going on my side of the internet here. What else? What else? What else? I am pro werewolf, so I'm gonna go with the werewolf there, Tharnal. Um, don't know if that's gonna, go down, but but yeah. So, but yes, once again, it does seem like Alan has just gone out of his way to raw dog me while I'm here. I'm just kidding. He probably doesn't know I was doing a stream. I didn't really put this up till around like 12 today, so like 2 hours ago. So yeah, whatever. Um, they put out another Freaky Friday movie. I'm not really interested in seeing it. Werewolf would probably get real into the playing fetch thing. Speaking of werewolves, you know what else has werewolves? Men at Arms. And the way that Sir Terry Pratchett writes about the werewolves is quite fascinating, I might say. I'm really enjoying Men at Arms. There's a lot of really fun, clever ideas that he puts into the book, and I'm having a lot of having a lot of fun. Uh, exploring. Having a lot of fun with this thing. Yes, I am aiming to start The Devils sometime in September, and I'm going to get through it. I don't know if I'm going to like it because I've heard it has a bit of a is well, okay, I'm not saying that the fifth I'm not saying that Men at Arms is like the werewolf book. It just has a werewolf in it, which is pretty fun. So, there you go. I won't say who it is, for spoilers if people care about all that, but it's there. So, which is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. Unless never mind. That might be a little spoilery. But yeah, The Devils. I'm hoping to read that sometime in September. I don't know if I'm gonna like it because I've heard very, very mixed things. Like, my friend Jason really hated it, but then like Matt's fantasy book reviews really liked it. I I don't really care for what Matt's fantasy book reviews says though, because well, you know what? I find it to be a bit inappropriate to talk about shade on booktubers. I haven't invited Derry. I'll send her an invite. I don't know if she'll show up because I don't see her, frolicking around on Discord because she's on my Discworld chat. But I'll send her an invite. So okay. Hi, Derry. I have a stream today. If you'd like to join, here's the link. Very poorly timed, but I don't know if she's going to join, but all right, I've sent it to her now. Well, I do want to read it. I want to have opinions on it. It's just kind of, I just don't know if I'm going to like it very much. I might, we'll see where it goes. It does have a werewolf apparently, so I'm like, all right, can't be all bad. I did. Yeah, I asked Ref if he wants to come on. He said he just got back from where he was at, so he's not really sure, but, he might, he said he'll think about it, which, that could mean anything. So, not holding my breath, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know if there's a less obvious book than A Brief History of Seven Killings. I think that's a really interesting book. I recommend getting the audiobook. I am really glad that I got the audiobook. I will probably have to buy it because it turns out when you decide to sign up for a free membership for a month, if you decide to quit that free membership, it'll give you an expiration date for the fucking audiobook. So I'll have to buy the damn thing. So, yeah, don't do that. Fucking free month trials are scams. It's annoying. It's quite annoying. But yes. So yeah. What am I doing next week? Oh, Alex is here. How you doing, man? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, no, because I haven't. Here, I'll show you guys real quick. It has like an expiration date. For the 26th, and I'm like, that's bullshit. So let me go to my library. There we go. It says included until 8/26. So I'll have to buy the damn thing. Which is like $30, which that's not awful, but it's annoying, is all I'll say. It's very annoying. I did buy Pale Fire as well, because I wanted to I'm hoping to read Pale Fire before the end of the year. So here's hoping that pans out. Oh, you finished The Road. What'd you think of it, Alex? I'm gonna see if he texted me, because sometimes Alex likes to join, but if he doesn't, that's fine too. Not gonna. Hello, Mark. How you doing? There is? What's it called? John Stein. I like John Steinbeck. Yeah, I know a lot of the like McCarthy hard, like the real hard like McCarthy fans, like hardened McCarthy fans, like don't like it because it's like kind of a mainstream book. But I really enjoyed it. It was also my first one, so I have a soft spot for it. Let's see. much more lighter in tone than Blood Meridian. That's a interesting that's a way to put it. Oh, that's funny. I guess it is considerably lighter because there is some hope in the road in Blood Meridian. There is no hope whatsoever. That's funny. Oh, that's great. Love that guy. Just finished The Heaven Tree by Edith Pargeter. Probably butchered that. I'm really sorry. And reading Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. Never heard of either of those books. So there you go. Does this mean Empire of Silence, Mark? Or I've never heard of An Inkling of Flame. So Heaven Tree has has some of the best dialogue I've ever read. I'll have to check it out because I love dialogue. I'm a bit of a dialogue snob. But yeah. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this, guys. I have good news. We got a guest. And you know him. You love him. It's Raph. How you doing, man?
Well, I am alive, which I guess is more than can be asked for. No, I'm good. I've been at another heavy metal festival since Tuesday early morning, and just came back 3 hours ago. So I'm somewhat wrecked, and my voice is a bit broken. But I figured I'll jump in, see how you guys are doing for like a couple, for an hour or so, and to deal with that rough voice, I brought something to drink.
Yeah, your voice sounds
Cheers.
a little deeper than usual.
Yeah, but it's all that screaming and stuff, which happens when you're like at a Blind Guardian show and like all these other shows.
Actually, if you look at Carly thematic. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know if I really think of it. I kind of view it a little differently, but yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying.
All right, let me get up to speed here and see what's going on.
Oh, I didn't know
Holy
you did
shit.
videos, Ida. I know you did videos. I'll watch it. But yeah. So I am enjoying Men at Arms. I know you commented earlier on the Discord files Discord server, but I'm like, I'm like, wait a minute, is this what that thing is? And I'm like, I think it is. It didn't put it together at first.
Yes, Ida, of course I will watch your vlog for Wizard of the Patrons. I saw your comment. I just, as I said, I've been camping out in like 30 something degrees temperatures.
Oh, geez.
Hanging out in front of stages for like 12 to 14 hours per day.
Oh wait, no, I forget the temperature in Europe's different than how it is in America. Because when I hear 30, I think it's like frigid out there.
No. 30 plus here is somewhere in the high 90s, I think.
Oh, okay, that's pretty hot, but like it's not.
It's certainly hot if you're at like a festival and standing in the sun all day.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I saw that Alan was doing a stream. I'm like, damn, dude. Come on. But no, it's well, I know it's different in America because when I hear 30, we do Fahrenheit. So when you do 30, that means it's freaking cold as shit.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like the hottest thing ever. I'm just saying like for like someone living in Germany, it's not exactly the standard temperature, and at like a music festival for like 5 days in a row, you're also like physically active at those kind of events, so it doesn't really help.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had some adventures, Raph.
No, well, I mean, nothing out of the ordinary. A friend of mine who was like, we were there with like a group of friends, and she had like an accident in a mosh pit and had to go to the hospital. But like,
Oh
luckily,
no.
nothing too serious happened. Just like a lot of bruising and stuff, and they wanted to monitor it to see if something more happened. But rock and roll is kind of dangerous from time to time.
Were there any mosh pits, or was it not that hardcore? Well, Alex, I'll send you the link then. I mean, you just put it like that.
But yeah, so that was what I did, which is also why I didn't actually read a lot. I assume. I mean, I saw all your messages in the conversation with Jerry about Men at Arms, and I just read them like when I came back here, because also my
Yeah, I kind
phone's
of felt
kind of
bad when I kept like commenting and like nobody responded. I'm like, oh god, I hope
Oh
I'm
no,
not
I'm sorry. Like I like I've had like my phone stuff has been cursed. So at the festival, obviously, like reception's not too good if you're like out in the fucking countryside, and there's like suddenly like 50,000 people trying to use their phones. You can imagine that stuff gets a bit slow. And then I dropped my phone, and
oh no.
no, it's fine. The SIM card got knocked loose, and it took me like, I don't know, a day to find like something to actually get it out and reset it, and I've done that. And now I lost my phone charger, so I need to wait until tomorrow before I can buy a new phone charger. And my battery is running low, so I did not actually have like a lot of like the ability to partake in like online conversations, and
Well, yeah, like I said, I knew you were gone, so I was kind of like, all right,
yeah, I was.
I'm sure he's busy. It's fine. Yeah, no, but yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with Ben at Arms, though. I'm just kind of like. Also, someone asked me who my favorite of the guards. I think it was Ori who asked me my favorite of the guards so far. Sam Vimes. I really like Samuel Vimes. He's a good guy. Well, I don't know if he's a good guy, but he's a guy who wants to do good. So there you go.
I think that's kind of the definition of a good guy, is someone who actually wants to do good.
Well, he's kind of a jerk. he's kind of prejudiced in this book. You're like, damn. But yeah, no, he wants to do good though. It's like that's what counts.
I think you will continue to like Sam Vimes. He is also
Carrot's really growing on me too. But Raph knows that because I've been talking about it in the
yeah. I think what is interesting with Sam Vimes is that you can see him from like book to book slowly overcoming like some of his prejudices and stuff like that, especially when it comes to trolls and dwarves and stuff. Like he does grow and change over time, which is part of the things. Like in a lot of ways, he is very much, I think, a character that is very close to like Terry Pratchett as a person, overcoming his own sort of like prejudices. Like through the experience of just like living and having to work with people that you are prejudiced against. Once you meet people and realize they are actual people and not just like stereotypes in your head, then a lot of people lose a lot of prejudice over that through that way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, though he kind of goes over it in the book. It's kind of like Sam Vimes. He doesn't really like anybody. Or maybe it was Tharnall who asked me, because Ori's like, I don't ask people what their favorite characters are. So I guess it was Tharnall. It was either Ori or Tharnall. I don't remember who it was, but Ori does ask, does Men at Arms have the CSI unit? I haven't seen it yet.
No, it does not yet have that. That comes later. It's a result of the things happening in Men at Arms. I am one book closer, one book ahead in the reading the Hugo's 2025 project. I don't know what happened. As I said, I haven't checked any news, and I have not yet finished Lucky a Day by Chuck Tingle, because I downloaded it on my phone on the way to the festival, and then obviously I didn't get to it. So it's a project for tomorrow, is to read Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle, which I'm excited for. It's supposed to have zombies in it in Las Vegas, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I saw Reads with Rachel did a video about Chuck Tingle behaving badly for some reason. I didn't watch it because I've kind of lost interest in Reads with Rachel. Not really a fan of her content, but it's out there.
I haven't seen that yet either because I just
Yeah,
came
you've
back.
been away. I should note, I don't know if you heard me, but I was kind of slightly complaining about Audible earlier because I'm reading Brief History of Seven Killings right now. I got the audiobook for it as well,
Yeah.
so doing both. And I'm like, yeah, I have to I'm kind of mad that they won't just let me like download it for free. They did for the trial, and then it's like until the 26th you can have it. I'm like,
Oh,
damn.
nice. So speculative whiteness one. Yeah, that's a really good one. I still want to probably talk about it and make like a video or something on it because it is a really, really good book and interesting. It does unfortunately also have some failings, I think, in its focus on the alt-right as this like sort of discrete sort of like element of like you know right-wing radicalism or like stuff in like that Richard Spencer era, and he kind of goes like, well, the alt-right after the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally kind of disbanded or moved off into different directions, and he doesn't follow up on that, and that I think is a bit of a failing there. But it might just be because of this being an academic project, and you kind of need to delineate like what you're studying and what you're not studying. So it focuses a lot on a very short period in time and does not actually go far beyond like, hey, so what happened with all of those alt-right Nazis afterwards? Are they still liking science fiction and reading it the wrong way or not? That's a bit of a failing there, but overall I think it's a helpful book and it's a necessary book when it comes to understanding why sci-fi and fantasy does have a bit of a Nazi problem, and how it is a very specific form of a Nazi problem, I think. And that I think that is the key element of speculative whiteness. Also, it's out there on open access, so you can actually read it for free on the internet legally, and that's really cool. And it's relatively short, so I think everyone should read that if they're interested in like
Seems
the larger thing.
it seems like it was kind of a busy week for a lot of people because like I guess Worldcon was this week. A lot of my
Yeah,
friends went to that. Joe Byrne went to it.
I know.
Our mutual friend Joe, and John Minton went, and Adrian Gibson went, and Bookborn went, which like cool. A lot of people went. A lot of people went. I was kind of I had a little FOMO there because I was like, damn, like I should have gotten off my ass and done something, but whatever.
Where was Worldcon this year?
It's in Seattle,
In
so
Seattle this year. Oh, okay, yeah.
I
Because
mean it's
Worldcon moves around. Like last year it was in Glasgow, and I was like, "Hey, it's in Europe. I should maybe look into that." And then I saw like what like the badges cost, and then I looked at like what flights to Scotland cost, and then I looked at like, well, you also need a hostel or like a hotel room or something, and then I realized that it would be like upwards of like 500 euros for me to actually go to Worldcon. I'm like, yeah, I don't have that kind of money just lying around for something like this.
yeah, it's I thought for a minute, I thought for a second, Demidrek said I don't have the faggiest idea. And I'm like, that's a little inappropriate, but it says foggiest, so sorry about that.
Okay, Worldcon is the World Fantasy Con, and it's also where the Hugo Awards are given out, and they are voted on by the people that attend Worldcon or attended the last one or attended the next one. I think those 3 years attendance get to vote on the Hugos, but like you can also buy like just the Hugo supporting membership if you can't go there, and then you get like a big box of like, well, I guess PDFs at this point of like different stories and stuff that you get to read if you want to vote on like the Hugo Awards. Ori, I would love to do an interview with Jordan Carroll. I thought I had messaged him on Blue Sky and asked him about that, but either I did not actually send the message because that was like in a while ago when Blue Sky messaging was just like brand new and still kind of wonky. So maybe there was like an issue there, or he did never get back to me because he just isn't interested in it. So I'll have to figure that one out and see if the message never sent or what's going on there. And if the message never sent, I will definitely attempt that again and see if there might be a conversation, because yes, would be worth it.
But yeah, no, it's but yeah, it happened. I was just kind of like, damn, should have, you know, gotten some money together for that. But whatever. It's not a big deal. I just sat around and read for most of the week, so it wasn't too bad.
That's very good. I reread Hayek's Bastards again, which is also like a really good book. And as it happens, Friedrich Hayek does get like a citation in speculative whiteness because, of course, he does, and
The
that is really
economist,
helpful for
the
me.
economist.
Yes, well, like Hayek is much more than an economist. That's like really important to understand with someone like Friedrich Hayek, and obviously also Ludwig von Mises. Those people were a lot of things. They did economy stuff, but Hayek in particular did a lot of more like political philosophy and stuff like that than like actual economic work. And a lot of like neoliberalism is really tied in with white supremacy and racism, as it turns out. And Friedrich Hayek did, give talks in South Africa, and some of the other people from like the Mont Pelerin Society, which is the society of where like a lot of like neoliberal ideology kind of started with, ended up being in support of apartheid regimes, both South Africa and of course Rhodesia, because of course they did. And that kind of moves into like the Mises Institute and people like Murray Rothbard, who is definitely also in a lot of ways very close to race realism. And then you have like Charles Murray, the guy who wrote The Bell Curve, who is also a member of the Mont Pelerin Society, and or used to be, and is very much a race realist, or what you might call a scientific racist at this point. And so yeah, all of that stuff does unfortunately tie together very well, which is, I guess good for me and my next video project, but it's certainly not necessarily good for the world at large.
I haven't read Sylvia Moreno Garcia yet. I've wanted to. I don't know where to start with any of her books. I was thinking maybe just trying like Mexican Gothic or something, because I know that was making the rounds a few years ago. Or at least I've seen it make the rounds on BookTube. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's like a darling.
Mexican Gothic is a book that a lot of people have read, and then kind of everyone stopped talking about Silvia Moreno Garcia. I still haven't read Mexican Gothic.
Well, where would you recommend I start, Ref?
I don't know. I've read The Seventh Whale of Salome, which I really loved. That was her book from last year, which is a sort of like a historical fiction set in like 1950s, like Hollywood, when like all of those like biblical epic movies were made, and it's about like the filming of a movie about Salome, the biblical Salome, and then it has like sort of like
I have thought about reading that one. I'll check it
it's
out.
really
Gods
good.
of Jade and Shadows. Yeah, I have thought about reading that one.
And I read The Bewitching, which is her book from this year, which is partly dark academia, partly a story about witchcraft in early 19th century, early 20th century Mexico, and partly about something in between about pulp fiction in the 1930s, which allows Silvia Moreno Garcia to, drop a lot of like Lovecraft references in the book, which is, fun in its own rate. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that one as well. And I've heard
she seems
good.
like one. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Finish your thought.
I've heard a lot of good things about Silver Nitrate, which I think is probably the thing.
Oh, yeah, I thought you read that one.
No, I haven't read that one. I'm not sure if it'll work really well for me because Silvia Moreno Garcia is a nerd, and that is really good. But it also means that the books often have like a very specific focus, and Silver Nitrate being about like 80s horror movies and stuff, might make it kind of harder for me to read that because I haven't watched like too many of those. Obviously, I've watched one of the classics, but like I might not get like a lot of the references. Whereas in The Bewitching, when she mentions C.L. Moore's Girel of Joiry in like the first chapter, that makes me very happy because that's the kind of nerd shit I have, where I get the references. So I think that's like one of the things that may make it a bit difficult sometimes.
Well, we have another guest in here. We got Alex. How you doing, man?
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, we're just that's one of the things I kind of like about Sylvia Morena, or the one that's interested me anyway, is that she seems to have a real fondness for kind of that like, pulpy kind of
Yes.
sillier aspects of speculative fiction, which is interesting. I always like seeing people try to modernize pulp stuff.
Yeah, no, or it's about the Mexican horror movies.
I've not
Oh, and
watched a Mexican horror movie.
I saw the question, like, what is speculative whiteness? It's a book by Jordan S. Carroll, came out last year, I think in November-ish. It's an academic book, and it's, speculative whiteness, science fiction and the alt-right. And it's about, the alt-right being very fascinated with different aspects of science fiction literature, mostly science fiction, some fantasy, but like in particular with science fiction, and how they approach that and what they are taking out of it and what connections there are between those two things and why that may be a problem. So it's a really good book if you're interested in science fiction history and politics and so forth. And so that's what it is.
But Alex, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Like I said in the chat, I finished The Road, and now I got to figure out what to read next. So I think I'm taking a break from McCarthy though, 'cause it's been 2 in a row. So
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
yeah.
Be a bit you can be a bit not you can be bewildering, we'll say, because
Yeah, I also need to get back into Wheel of Time because I took a long break because I have not been super into it, but I bought them, so I feel compulsion that I have to finish it. Other people just quit, but I spent my hard-earned money on it, so it's like I have to finish it. I don't hate it, but it's people really hype it up, and I think it's fine so far. And then people said there's a slog, and I'm like, if there's a slog and I'm just barely enjoying it now, I'm gonna suffer later
oh
on.
man. Well, if I recall correctly, Raph read the whole thing because he's a masochist, I guess, and talked about how sexist it was.
Well, that's another thing. People told me it's like it's all about equality and like working together, and I'm like, I guess it just seems like caricatures of both men and women. So I don't know. I don't know.
Nah, it's not just sexist. It's also like racist and homophobic and a lot of other things in between. It's
It has some old fashioned views, I guess.
But it is the '90s, and it was written by a Mormon. So I mean, not there's anything wrong with Mormon.
No. I don't think he was a Mormon, was he?
Oh, he wasn't. I thought that was like a big thing.
I mean, it was finished by Sanderson, who was a Mormon, but I don't think Robert Jordan was actually Mormon. I think he was some evangelical, but he was certainly a very believing Christian of one denomination or another. And I'll just lump in Mormonism with Christianity for a moment here. Obviously,
Okay.
I mean, but yeah. Now I think a lot of stuff with like the Wheel of Time is that it is not just like old fashioned, but it is very much sort of like written by someone who really, really believes that he's doing some good stuff here, right? And then all the like toxic sort of like stuff that is just baked into like our ideologies in general basically kind of come through in like the worst ways. And it's like, men and women are actually equal and women are actually really strong, but they definitely can't understand each other and are unable to talk to each other. And that is just also part of like being a man or a woman. So that gender essentialism is really, really strong in that one. And that's that kind of takes away a lot from that sort of like superficial idea of like, hey, look, we have a society where women are actually sometimes in power. And isn't that great?
Well, on top of that, I just think it's, I don't know. There's yet to be. I hear kind of the characterization and the character growth kind of is.
Right back.
You have to take the entire series into account. But like, I'm 4 books in, and I don't love a single character. So I'm like, why am I suffering? But people say like after the 14, then you really start to appreciate it throughout the books. But I don't think you should have to read 14 to fall in love with all these characters.
Nah, but I think like one of the interesting things with like Wheel of Time in particular is that it came at the right time in that it started getting more traction in like the early to mid 90s, which is exactly when like the internet started becoming more of a thing. So Wheel of Time was like the first like big epic fantasy series where you have like an international fandom that is able to communicate and talk about it while the books are being published, and that I think gave it like such a huge impact on like the larger fantasy scene, in that it was like the first one that had that sort of like fandom and message boards and people arguing about stuff and theories on the internet, and I think that made it so impactful for like the next generation of younger fantasy authors who grew up in that fandom, I think.
And that's important for that. I mean, I've yet to read a single Brandon Sanderson work, but his name, the moment you come into the booktube sphere, it's everywhere. So, and he was heavily inspired by Wheel of Time and Robert Jordan. So, and I'm sure a bunch of other authors were too. So there is that.
I like Ori's comment. The Wheel of Time is a medieval torture device. And Tharnall says the best thing about Wheel of Time are the chimerical orcs and the ginger ninja Freymans. That's a reference to Dune.
I mean, yeah, they have a group of people that I as soon as I read them in book form, like, oh, so it's just the Fremen from Dune.
They are like very similar. Yes, the Aiel are very much like heavily inspired by Dune, but we can't have them look slightly, at least Mediterranean or something, so they have to be incredibly pale-skinned and ginger-haired while living in a desert, which apparently is no big problem. But they also dress in like ninja-style clothes and are apparently the most brutal fighters on the entire world. It's weird. It's a bit of like a mess in that it does sort of like take a lot of like influences that are very, very clear in the beginning, at least, and then like where you can see like, oh, he just like stole the whole like first part of the first book is just a Lord of the Rings ripoff. It's just like, oh no, we have to leave this village, and we're hunted by these people, like these dark-clad shadowy creatures whose faces we can't see, and apparently they can also fly or have like black horses, and they're hunting us, and so we have to leave our wonderful idyllic homeland where everything is peaceful and have to go out into the world to do stuff. And I'm like, I've read that plot before. That wasn't like the sword of Shannara.
You know, one of my favorite thumbnails of yours, Raph, is I think it was like a stream you did, and like it's you as the Nazgul, and it's like you smiling, and like everyone's like hiding from you. That was a good one.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was the one like for like booktube anniversary kind of thing where we like changed the thumbnail every couple of days and added like another guest as like another person hiding from me as being the Nazgul. That was fun.
The thing I'm more looking forward to and dreading all at the same time, I'm going to intersperse it with Wheel of Time because I figured, I don't know, but the second Apocalypse, because I finished The Prince of Nothing, which was hard because it was written really, really well, but then it's also all that gross stuff in between, which I'm no prude, but it's quite uncomfy most of the time. And I know Raph talked about it with Philip and other people. I watched as soon as I finished the book, I immediately went and watched you guys talk about it. So,
yeah, it is. I still have to read like more than like the first trilogy, but yeah, it's. I have my issues, and I don't think they will go away.
Probably not. But yeah, one of the reasons I even started McCarthy is because I heard that the second Apocalypse quadrilogy is like a mix of Lord of the Rings and Blood Meridian. So like, okay, I'll read this beforehand. And then I just kept reading McCarthy.
Yeah, I feel like McCarthy can be very fascinating and interesting to read and like hard to put down if you can sort of like vibe with like his specific sort of like approach to bleakness and stuff. What I find so interesting with McCarthy though is that he has a very, very sort of like biblical language in a lot of ways and draws in
really.
Like without ever being explicitly religious in any way, he manages to really like evoke that sort of like Old Testament sort of like atmosphere. And I think that is really important for his sort of like approach to writing about America.
Yeah.
it gets vicious.
And I think it's important too, because like Blood Meridian is historical fiction for sure. Like it's Judge Holden in the way he talks in that book is not real. Or was it Judge Holden? She probably wasn't like that. But
Yeah.
you can read a history book, you can hear about all these things in the Old West and things that were done, but you know, the violence was never just, oh, it's cool to have dark things in here. It was done to put a face to the random numbers they put, in the history books of, oh yeah, there was a Glanton gang. They did do these things. It was like, okay, but here's some actual innocent people to put to that. Do you actually feel that? Like,
I don't think anyone actually comes off looking good in Blood Meridian.
No, yeah, no one's supposed to. Not even a kid who's arguably the most innocent, even though he's definitely not innocent. But it could be argued since we never see him. Whenever the violence is happening, he's always talked about after the fact. So you could interpret it as he doesn't actively involve himself in it unless he's like in trouble. But or you could believe that he fully indulged in it too. But it's left open to believe as you wish with that.
But I think that's like part of the point, right? Is that if you put human beings into these specific situations where they get paid for killing native people and so forth, and like if how violence dehumanizes you and becomes like second nature in a lot of ways, and you just don't think about it at some point. It just becomes this other thing, and that sort of like road to like fully like losing your humanity because of extremely violent situations. I think that's kind of the point. And it's like, of course the kid does all of these things because at this point, are we still talking about human beings that follow sort of like those basic understandings of like human nature that we may have about the golden rule, that kind of shit? Or like, and violence dehumanizes people. That's obviously something that we've seen in other situations, and I think that for me was sort of like the point of Blood Meridian, was to see how like a brutal environment breeds like or creates incredibly brutal people that are unfit to sort of like, and how, or necessarily unfit, but like will struggle very hard once they come back into society in one way or another.
Yeah, it was really, that book was really the first one that kind of gave me an idea of what like genocide was actually like, in a way.
Yeah. I mean, when you get to the point where it's like, oh, well, I mean, it's scalps. How do you actually identify that? We could just go to a town with, innocent people. That's a hard thing to define in Blood Meridian, but people that will actively not attack you, they're completely innocent, but they have black hair. So who could tell the difference? They'll scalp their heads too. It's awful.
Yeah, or he says that happens to soldiers all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And I think it's even like easy to see like in our own sort of like things, like remember when you could like still get like points and stuff for hitting people in old GTA games, and how easy it was from like trying to fulfill your missions and so forth, to just going like, hey, I can just like run over all the pedestrians to get like additional bonus points, and how quickly a lot of us made that switch in our head when we were like 12, 13, or whenever we started playing the GTA for the first time. It is easy to go down that road, I think is the point.
Yeah.
Indeed. But then again, I like bleak violent stuff. So I'm like, yeah, Blood Meridian, let's go. No, I'm kidding.
I was a weird kid who always had to like have a storyline when I play with my toys. Like, when you see movies and stuff, where you have like a kid like with two dinosaurs and they're just attacking, and it's like that's really their whole world. Like that's it. No, I had to like have a reason those dinosaurs were attacking. Like I had to come up with a whole like a lab
fighting each other.
Yeah. So,
I don't
or
know,
like even sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Like on that point, like once again, how easy it is to think in those ways. Like I remember, like once again, like with a video game, probably because I was still a teenager and I was probably not supposed to play it at the time. But like when I first played like some of the Hitman games, it's like you play that for like hours on straight, and then you go out and you walk through your town because you're buying groceries or whatever, and you're like, now this would be like a really good spot for a sniper's nest, and this would be really good. Like, and you start seeing the world.
I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, that definitely happens.
Like where I work, I've often thought like, man, this would make a good like like a Call of Duty Zombies map or something.
Yeah, it is very easy to think that way, and I feel it's good for us to sort of like remind ourselves from time to time that that is not necessarily like a good thing. We might want to watch how might want to watch our brain in that situation.
Might
Go
watch
like,
The
hey,
Hobbit.
Yeah.
You're like, this is a
Don't
good
listen to
place to smoke
Superman,
some of
you
that,
know,
some of
cleanse
that
yourself.
Hobbit weed. Smoking in the Shire.
And hobbits were doing it the best, and then everybody had to go bother them to go help. They're just
Yeah,
living life,
hobbits.
not bothering anybody.
You just need to like pressure them a little bit. Just go like, oh, Bilbo, you really should. It's a lot of fun, and he'll be like,
Yeah.
damn
You're right.
it, you're
Yeah, I
right.
guess. Yeah. And then Frodo
as
gets
long
the
as
short end of the stick.
like the thing, Thornell, is that if you see the patterns for climbing, make sure there is a hay pail underneath when you do that. That is the
Oh
key thing
yeah,
I learned from Assassin's Creed.
yeah. You can survive any fall
I
as long
can
as
never
there's a
get
hay
into Assassin's
underneath.
Creed. It's too convoluted for my taste. I'm like,
Is
how do
it?
is this a freaking assassin game? Like, how do you have to be so complicated?
Well, the Assassin's Creed games prior to whatever they're doing now, I thought were actually pretty solid stuff with being a mix of historical fiction and sci-fi. With the first Civilization, I thought all that stuff was glorious. So, but I also grew up with it, so you know.
Yeah, no, Ori, you're definitely right. Like, I mean, that's like the thing, right? Like, a lot of gaming is about patterns, no matter what it is, and if you spend like if you focus heavily on that one thing for like a long time ago, and like at least when I was still playing video games, I was like just finishing school, starting university, and that times like you spend like 5, 6, 7 hours straight playing a video game. Those routines take a while to wear off immediately afterwards. It's just like
Yeah.
and
All the days when you could play a video game for that long. Then you're an adult, you got no time to do so.
yeah. I feel like, to bring it back to books, there is this thing in that Pratchett has in the Tiffany Aching books about like first thoughts and second thoughts and third thoughts. And it's like you think something and then you think about like why you were thinking that, and then you step back and go like, why was I thinking this about the world? Like looking at ourselves and going like, so why I'm doing this is like a really, really important skill to learn, and recognizing the fact that we do, if we play video games or do anything of the sort, and suddenly those patterns show up in like other parts of our lives, to step back and go like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. And I think reading a book like The Road, or like a lot of Cormac McCarthy, like reading a book like Blood Meridian in particular, can be sort of like a way for us to sort of come to like a reckoning with ourselves. And that's like, hey, I would probably not have fared much better in that world than any of the characters there, even though, I think of myself as not necessarily like the most violent of persons, although I threatened to, beat up people over their opinions about Iron Maiden in the past. But,
Though, I mean, don't be a Nazi, and you'll probably be fine. Which, it's not very hard to. Don't be a fascist or a Nazi. I'm sure you'll be fine. Which isn't hard to be.
You'd think it was a low bar, but look at the world.
That's true. This is true.
I think we all have the capacity for evil, and it's about resisting that every day. And I think that's the important thing to take away from Blood Meridian, is that if we're put in the same circumstances, we could certainly be, or if we grew up in that environment, I guess I should say, we could be like that too. And the choices we make to be good every day are what set us apart.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think it's also about like the allure of violence. You kind of see that through the Judge.
Yeah. Oh, Judge Holden, one of the greatest villains I've ever read.
Yeah, you're right. Like I watched that conversation that Esselmont and AP Canavan had on like violence, and I agree. I think it kind of, and I was surprised that neither one brought that up. There is that, and I recently also watched a video of like Bro Deschanel's video about like war movies, or is it possible to make an anti-war movie? And there's that quote at the beginning of Slaughterhouse 5, where it's like it's basically impossible to write a book or make a movie about war without making it look cool enough for some people to go like, hey, I want to do this as well. And it's very, very difficult to do that. There is an allure to violence, and it's very difficult to make violence sort of like impactful and graphic in one way or another without it also without some people going like, hey, this is really cool. And I still don't know how to do that. And
Yeah, that was my biggest thing, because I know also Erickson does that in quite a few instances in the Book of the Fallen, where he's critiquing violence. But at the same time, I'm like, but you created Karsa, and everything Karsa does is really cool, and you wrote it to be cool. You didn't write it to not be cool. So on the one hand, you're telling us how evil some of the things he does is, but you also want to make him seem really cool. So it's like kind of a double-edged sword there. Where it's like you got to pick a lane. But
have you read Erickson's essay on the problem of Karsa Orlong?
I have. I really like Karsa, so I read that shortly after that. So I was just saying that was my thoughts as I was going through it before reading that article about it.
Yeah, I think what I find so fascinating with Karsa is you start reading his arc, and I mean Karsa is not necessarily my favorite character, right? But you start reading the beginning of the House of Chains, and it is old Karsa's story, and he and his friends go and they actively say, we want to go and kill the children. That's his goal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you read that part and go like, man, Karsa is so cool. I'm like, it's on the page.
Yeah.
Right? It's on the
I mean,
page.
more like later on, he does stuff that's clearly meant to be him cool. Not necessarily that part, but I'm thinking more toward the end when
Definitely.
certain part comes off.
I feel my perspective is I feel it would be disingenuous if you didn't show kind of that allure in a way. Not saying that war isn't like a horrible thing, because it definitely is. Or even stuff like Judge Dredd, which is kind of interesting because like Judge Dredd is sort of like you said, is sort of like critiquing like violence and that sort of machismo, but it's kind of interesting because you can tell like the writers also kind of like that and appreciate why that stuff is cool, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, because a lot of any action movie, any adventure book or whatever, and there's action in it and there's violence. And on the one hand, it's like, but that stuff, some of that stuff actually happens, and it's not pretty and it's not fun. But then it's also like you want to have an entertaining book, and part of that is violence is exciting. So it's like
we're also a bloodthirsty species. Like, punch him.
Ori, you're right. Like Warhammer in particular and Judge Dredd very much like have the same problem. Warhammer does have its like hardcore Nazi problem, which Games Workshop is certainly trying to get over. But those people still exist, and that's like a general like questions like as an artist, like how much responsibility do you have like to make. Like, at what point can you be blamed for Nazis liking your stuff, and at what point is it just out of your hands because people do, in fact, willfully ignore stuff? That is part of like once again that comes up in speculative whiteness, like how the alt-right is deliberately misreading science fiction books in all kinds of ways. And going like, yes, of course, Dune is a white savior story, and it is great that he does that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's the lesson. Like with all the criticism that you can make about about Dune and its follow-ups, there is a lot of criticisms. But he's not exactly going like, hey, be like Paul Atreides. That's not the message the book has.
He's what not to do.
But it is interesting to see the length to which people can go when it comes to like misreading this. Like with like Warhammer, at least in like I feel in newer generations, it's harder to sort of understand how much criticism and how much satire that those worlds are, because most people playing Warhammer right now probably don't even know who Margaret Thatcher was. So there is that. But like, you look at Elon Musk, and Elon Musk claims to be a huge fan of the culture novels by Ian M. Banks and wants to create the culture future. What he doesn't understand, though, is, or has willfully misread in like 10 fucking culture novels, is that Ian M. Banks was a socialist. And this is about like a post-scarcity anarchist utopia where there is no money. And he's like, no, we need capitalism in the future, but it's also going to be like the culture. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the subtext. It's right there. And that willingness and ability to fully sort of like ignore like key features of a text and go like, this is what I want to do, is something that I think is easy to happen. It can happen to anyone, like not just from the right. It's just like, but in there it's easy to show, but it's certainly not just from the right.
Yeah, I think Star Trek also does that. I know there's plenty of people on the right that like Star Trek, and they just ignore those aspects.
Yeah.
Though I've also been critical of Star Trek's lack of actual. It's like, oh, yep, utopia, and no money, everything's good, but we won't explain how to do that. It just is, which is the greatest part of the sci-fi aspect of it, is how does that actually work? Because they don't explain it.
So. You want to know what Star Trek is? It's a fucking white progressive's wet dream is what Star Trek is. And I say that as someone who likes Star Trek. Hey, Ida, I am not dissing Star Trek. I like Star Trek. Deep Space Nine's the shit. I'm not saying that Star Trek's bad. I'm just saying that's what it is.
Just because that's Captain. Just saying.
But that's kind of the point. It's like, hey, look, if Star Trek's future is actually really cool, and we can all agree on that, and you then go, what? It's like a white progressive's wet dream. I was like, well, maybe white progressives do have a point then, right? I mean.
Look, I'm not trying to say like that's bad. I'm just saying that's what it is, you know?
I think
see what? Look what would happen if we stop fighting with each other and stop being racist and sexist, and leave religion to the side. Even though that's never going to happen. But
no, it's never happened.
Ignore that. It's going to be great, guys. That's what Star Trek is.
Well, that's why Deep Space Nine is better, because it's a more realistic portrayal of what that would be like. Because you still have religion as a major part of Deep Space Nine, along with being a bit more critical of the totally optimistic view that Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation has. It's a bit more nuanced in Deep Space Nine, but also in Star Trek, everyone's respectful, and in real life, whether it's the right or the left, no one knows how to have a civilized conversation. So.
Yeah, I think like Star Trek in general, like the Star Trek franchise is fascinating in that it is usually very much sort of like a mirror of like the time when it is produced. So like you have the original old like Star Trek original series, which is very much comes out of like the late 50s, early 60s, civil rights movement, all the sort of like already sort of fairly liberal, like beginning of like the next feminist movement. It is very much that, and it is in like being a white progressive, like wet dream or whatever. It is very much rooted in that, and that means that like some of it hasn't really aged that well because it was written by someone with lots of privileges and not necessarily being aware of all those things. But what you can tell is he's like there is a spirit of like, hey, let's imagine a future that is actually cool and people are mostly good people. Wouldn't that be like interesting to have as a text? And I think that is really helpful, and it does kind of rhyme up to a point with that thing like that Neil Stephenson essay from like a while ago when he was complaining about the fact that there are like no actual utopias and there's like no books written about cool technologies and stuff that could inspire like people to then go and create new technologies. In that we do need like positive visions for the future of all kinds, right? And having none of those is dangerous, which is why we need, the whole like Frederick Jameson thing is like easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. It's like, but like if we imagine the future, it's like, why would we imagine it to run on the same structures as are now? If we have like flying cars and all this other cool shit, it's like, why would we still have, why would we still have all the stuff that sucks, right? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I actually saw an essay from Steven Erickson, who he wrote like an open letter to the people who were making another Star Trek thing. He was talking about why he thinks like Star Trek still works all these years later.
Oh, he's a big Trekkie.
yeah, he is a big Trekkie.
He's written like 3 Star Trek parodies, like Willful Child,
Yeah.
Child.
Yeah, I kind of want to check those out. I want to, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm more of a Star Wars guy than the Star Trek guy, but I do enjoy Trek. I do appreciate what it is.
I think I'm a big fan of Star Wars because of the old expanded universe, and I think the films are good, but I don't think I'd be as big of a fan of it as I am if not for the books. But Star Trek has had a much better track record on screen overall. So
yeah, but he was all like, "Oh,
watched that either. I have not watched Strange New Worlds, but
like the whole point of his open letter essay, whatever you want to call it, was kind of like, oh, we should have a future we should want to aspire towards. I'm like, that's all nice and all, but like, there's still going to be problems. Like,
for sure, yeah. If you want a realistic future, you got to still show some cracks. But it is also nice to have ideals too. Like, that's another reason. Like, I would never claim that the new Superman movie is like the pinnacle of cinema, because it's not. But it does have hope in it and something to aspire to, which I feel like a lot of superhero films lately have been lacking. So I appreciate that fact.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the big difference between Star Wars and Star Trek, is that like Star Trek is, in all of its versions, it always is sort of like a show that is driven by like a very clear sort of like moral framework. Those are sort of, a lot of them are morality. They're about morals, and Star Wars is not about that, because it comes from like a different storytelling tradition. It's it's all that Joseph Campbell stuff, and
more spiritual.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and not to put too fine a point on it, like Joseph Campbell was not necessarily someone whose ideals about like how the world should work are without problems, to put it mildly, and his appreciation of, say, Adolf Hitler was maybe something we should also look into.
He appreciated Adolf Hitler? I know that.
Oh, Joseph Campbell was very much a fan of Adolf Hitler, and
who isn't a fan of Adolf Hitler? Well, a lot of people.
His biggest fan is his dad. That was a joke based off of Norm Macdonald's stand-up. I don't know if you know Norm Macdonald, but he did a whole bit on Hitler. Well, not Hitler.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
But it's about how dogs have unconditional love, and so even a dog had unconditional love for Hitler. It was funny. But
well, yeah, the Borg are basically like communism, just taken up to like the nth degree, basically, where it's like you have no autonomy, you have no individuality, you're a part of the collective. Which that's extreme. It's an extreme for sure, but
Till they retconned it in one of the movies where there was a queen. But before that, the idea was it was just
why
a collective.
Did they do that? It's like, dude, just do that, man. Just have it as that. It worked fine when it was that.
Yeah.
It's one of my but yeah, no, it's like that's what Star Trek is. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally fine for what it is. But I will admit, some of Star Trek, the original series, feels a little masturbatory. I'm just saying. Like,
nothing wrong with masturbating, though, just to be clear.
No. I'm not being like just fucking killing me, man. Killing me. There's no masturbating, but like, no, I just mean like, it's all like, oh, look how great this all is, sometimes.
Yeah.
No disrespect to original Trek. I enjoy original Trek quite a bit.
Don't worry, there's plenty of disrespect about original Trek. Just depends on the season and the episode.
That's a good point.
The episode with Abraham Lincoln. Oh boy.
Oh man.
Fox brain. Oh.
But here's the thing: like, even original Star Trek, it very, very often still boils down to Kirk punching someone. It's still about violence.
Yes.
At some point.
Yeah.
It's like we're the Peaceful Federation. This guy clearly needs punching.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very pulpy in that way. It's very pulp.
It does feel very pulpy. One of the things I remember watching, because my parents were always like Star Wars fans, but they're like, Star Trek's for nerds. So I never watched it growing up. So I watched it after high school. I finally watched all of it. And I got to the episode with Khan where he shows up in Space Seed. I was like, this is the early 70s. And like, sure, he's a bad guy, but look, he's like the smartest guy in the room, and is played by a Hispanic guy. Later on, I read a book and learned that Khan's supposed to be Indian, and I was like, what? But he's clearly not. Whatever. So, but I thought that was really cool for the 70s to have such a intelligent villain be, a person of color like that. I mean, I know it's the 70s and they were already being a little bit more open and nice about that, but it was just impressive to see that then. So.
To bring back up that book, Speculative Whiteness, it's also it has a part where it talks about how Khan is, well, obviously, clearly he's a eugenicist and all of that stuff, and that's why a lot of like old right people really love Khan and just ignore the fact that he's supposed to not be white according to their definition of whiteness, and just once again like very selectively misread a specific aspect. Go like, no, he's not the villain. He's actually really, really cool. Also, he's very clearly one of our guys. And I'm like, yeah.
I think you're misunderstanding the
Yeah.
Also, just to be clear, Britton, the Borg are not what like the end point of communism is. Just to be clear.
Well, I said it's an exaggeration, so I didn't want to say like that's like whatever. But I was just saying it's an exaggeration a bit. Maybe not. I don't know. It's been a while since I've read like hardcore leftist literature.
I do it all the time.
Well, yeah, I know you do. I don't. Or well, not that I'm not against reading hardcore leftist, but literature. But it's just like
I think you might also have a definition.
I've been burned out on politics for a few years.
Same. It's you need some happiness in life, and if you're constantly in that, I mean, there's a healthy, you should be knowledgeable, but if you're always in the thick of that, then I feel like you're going to always constantly be a little down. So there definitely needs to be a balance there.
Even though I'm like pretty strongly pro capitalism, I fucking hate the Ferengi. I hate them.
Ferengi is so funny though.
So fucking annoying. Like they're funny, but like they're just so annoying.
I love Quark. He's probably one of my favorite characters on DS9.
Yeah, Quark's awesome. I love Quark, but he's just, oh my god.
Yeah. Well, but like one thing there, like when I recently read the what's it called, oral history of the New York Commune, Everything for Everyone, which is well, it's a very, very leftist positive picture of the future, because it's an oral history of the New York Commune to 2052 to 2072.
Oh yeah, I think I heard you talking about this the other day.
And that's exactly the kind of thing, because it does have some technology stuff in there, but it just goes like, so here's like how we live now, and isn't this actually so much better than what we have right now? And it does not, and it is full of like leftist theory and stuff in those bits and pieces in there, but it does just paint like a very positive picture of like a future that we could maybe work towards, and that I think is really helpful. And it's not like Star Trek in that regard. I mean, it shares the same sort of like, I guess, ambition of like showing a positive future, but it's certainly like further left and less white, progressive in a lot of ways. And but I just like.
Well, I'm just saying that I'm not gonna fucking. I was about to say I'm not gonna go there. Actually, I'm not gonna talk about the.
I think before we can even really hope for a better future, though, we have to get back to a place where people can get along and not. The issue is that nowadays, or at least in America, I can't speak for other countries, but it is very much, if you believe this, you are the villain. And that's right and left. They both do it heavily. And so the only way to first even get close to coming to some sort of a better future requires everyone to see each other as human and people, and not see each other as the enemy. And until that changes, I don't see it getting any better. Not to get too serious.
Yeah, I do agree with that. My point is more like that, like if we want to imagine different futures, we just need to open up that like that imaginary space up to a point.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and that's something that I feel like science fiction and fantasy can do that. And there's that quote that quote from China Miéville where he talks about like the radicalism of J.R.R. Tolkien by bringing like the concept of world building into like a broader understanding. Go like, hey, look, if we can imagine any possible world, that can have like a radical potential because we can imagine like much better worlds. The question then is like, why do most people imagine like worlds that are mostly like ours, but slightly more shit? Especially when we're talking about the future, that does, raise some larger questions of like where our general like state of mind in the world right now.
I think, we are all in a cynical view, and we need more optimism in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, like what is there to be optimistic about at the moment? It's not looking too hot right now.
Well, no. I guess the thing about optimism is even if it's not realistic, it's I just finished the road. It's the fire to keep burning, to keep us going. So
that's true.
Yeah, I feel like just like one of the big things that we kind of need to get over as a society, or at least when it comes to discourse, is like we need to dial down the cynicism a lot, right? You can tie that, or like probably even irony up to a point. You can tie that to like people like David Foster Wallace and his plea for like sincerity. I know there's lots of problems with David Foster Wallace. That's not my point, but I think there is some sort of like truth in there that we need to be even able and willing to talk about, emotions and good things without adding sort of like this layer of cynicism to armor us against like criticism, going like, no, actually, this is what I want the world to be. It's like, this is what I want. And it's not just like cynicism. And I think that is one of the things that we kind of need to get back to. And I have no idea how to do that, obviously.
Well, I mean, John is actually making a good point, which is not something I say very often, but John actually makes a good point here and says it's the playbook of the Protocols of Zion playing out now. Divide the people, make them hate each other to distract them from their enslavement. Though, to be fair, that's not really new. Like, how do you think Jim Crow worked? Like, it was basically, hey, dumb, poor white people, it's actually the black people that are screwing you over. So, yeah, just hate on them so we can just keep, fucking you over in peace, which is generally how that stuff works.
Well, as one of the oldest stories with the Bible, with Ecclesiastes says, there's nothing new under the sun.
This is true.
So.
It's true.
Yeah.
Precisely. I mean, I don't know if Raph agrees with that, but that's generally how.
That's just from wisdom literature. It's not even like talking about God specifically in that one. That's just a book on like wisdom.
Basically. That's what Stalin did. Well, not really with race, but he's basically like, those people in where did the fucking Holodomor happen? Let me look that up actually. Ukraine. Why the hell there's a fucking war going on? I knew it was in Ukraine. Anyway, it's like, hey, those poor Ukrainians are actually fucking you over right now by not giving them the wheat that we're supposed to just take from them because we're the government. So hate on them, and basically so we don't fuck you over. Even though it was a little different with Stalin. He was a crafty, for all the terrible things he did. He was a crafty bastard. I will say that. Joseph Stalin.
Yeah,
I don't say that with admiration. I'm just saying that's just how it was. He's.
You have to be a little smart to do something on that massive scale, and that applies to villains as well as heroes and everything in between. So you can give credit, I guess, to the scope of his thinking without being like, oh yeah, I'm all for that. So
I mean, like the Stalin. I'm not like the biggest expert on Stalin by a long shot, like because it's not my field of history where I mostly focus on. And but one thing that I feel is important to understand is like Stalin was in some ways very much I feel like a sincere person in that he wasn't necessarily like a hypocrite when it comes to like, oh, I'm pretending to be a poor socialist wanting to become a communist, and I'm one of the people. Like, he did certainly believe in what he thought of like were the right sort of like things to take away from like Marxist theory and all that stuff. He was wrong about those things, but and he in particular, he was obviously really, really wrong and stupid when it came to like Lysenko and all of that bullshit. Like, but I think it's important to sort of like look at like these different layers, like why is he doing certain things and how is he doing was he doing certain things, and you can sort of like take different lessons from those two aspects. And I think that is what makes Stalin such an interesting and fascinating character versus Hitler, who is not that kind of guy in a lot of ways.
Well, also Stalin knew a lot about history, so
yeah,
that
is like one
Hitler's
of those things.
Oh,
like,
we're gonna invade Russia. That's totally a great idea. Let's start a two-front war because that totally worked out for Germany last time. No, did not. God, it's like he never read fucking War and Peace or whatever. He didn't fucking read that book. You know what happened? No what? Then again, Hitler doesn't strike me as a big reader. I mean, I read Mein Kampf. I don't recommend reading Mein Kampf. It's a terrible book. But
that's true. Hitler was a huge fan of one German author, that is Karl May, who was a German who wrote loads of travel narratives that are, basically a 19th century German con man writing westerns and writing, stories about his supposed travels in the Near East and Middle East and stuff like that. And Hitler was a huge fan of those books apparently, and really, really thought they were like important reading material because you can learn a lot about the world from those books. By like a guy from Saxony who never set a foot into like any of the places he wrote about before he wrote about them, and was charged with like different forms of fraud
like,
before he came hit on that.
Such a weird case because like he was smart in some ways, but he was really fucking stupid in many other respects. I'm not saying like, oh, Hitler's a genius, because like telling people what they want to hear and getting elected on that does not take a lot of brilliance. I mean, look at fucking Donald Trump right now. He literally is like, hey, I'm just going to tell these disenfranchised working class white people what they want to hear. I'm going to get in the presidency. And it fucking worked twice because, people don't fucking learn.
I don't think the math works. I don't think the math thing is like the big explanation book about the whole thing about all the drug stuff, but I think like we need to understand, like, yes, they did like use a lot of chemicals. Everyone did during World War II. Like obviously during war, people take lots of drugs to keep performing. It's not a healthy habit, but then again, war is not necessarily like a healthy occupation to begin with. But I think there's like lots of stuff that kind of ties into the Nazi movement. You have the whole situation about World War One. You have a lot of like fucking traumatized World War One veterans, who are all very much psychologically damaged by that, and
then blaming everything on Germany didn't help either. And it wasn't all Germany's fault.
And they all like all those World War One survivors, obviously they are veterans. They have fought in like fucking trenches for years. They know how to fight. Those are not necessarily people you want to really, really mess with, which I guess sets them apart from like a lot of like the people who are, very enamored of like very far right politics right now. Those are not necessarily the same type of like street fighters that someone like Ernst Röhm could like call on with like the SA. Those were scary fuckers in a different way. But like I feel like the problem with both Stalin and even much more so with Hitler is that it's so easy to sort of like turn it into like a weird cult of personality, even if you're just like talking about like how scary, how evil the guy was, and sort of like ignoring all the systemic things that were like that led to that situation. Like, yes, Hitler was sort of like a charismatic leader in some ways, but
well, the Weimar Republic was kind of a shithole, to be honest with you. So that probably didn't help matters.
There was a lot of stuff that led up to that, and the fact
I should say it was an incompetently run shithole. So there you go.
That, but there's also once again, there's like lots of like other issues that fall into that. There's like the insanely high war reparations that Germany was supposed to buy to pay during a time where you have like then like the big whole like Great Depression kind of thing happening to the world. There's a lot of stuff that goes into what created the situation for Germany to become Nazi, and a lot of that is stuff that happened like 20, 30, 40, 50 years before that happened. And by just going like, hey, we have like these big name Nazis here that we kind of focus on. It's easy to ignore those systemic issues, and that I think is dangerous, and it kind of goes back to that whole like fascination with like evil, or with fascination with villains in a lot of ways, because it's much easier to go like, well, this guy was clearly evil and an evil genius, than go like, well, we have like an entire middle class that has been like high on anti-Semitism for like 40 years, and also really, really is scared of democracy, and all of these other elements that kind of come into that. And that I think is important to sort of keep in mind if you really want to focus on like the 1930s and 1940s. It's not necessarily, I think, the most fruitful pursuit in general. Karl May is definitely fun, or at least I think so in my memory, but it's been like, yeah, I was a kid when I read them. It was like one of the options for my like Christmas reading thing last year was to read like a bunch of Karl May books and talk about those, and look at like how unreadable I will find them as someone with,
So was the
something
guy?
like 30.
So what was the guy, like a proto-Nazi or something?
No, Karl May was very much not a Nazi. There's a lot of like sort of like racism in those books, just by virtue of being written in like the 1850s and 60s and 70s. But it's more like positive, what you might call positive racism. So it's not like these positive racism sounds bad, but you know what I mean? Like there is, negative stereotypes, and then there's positive stereotypes, but they are still stereotypes. But Karl May was very like a Christian in this, like all humans should work together, and he was like very utopian when it comes to that aspect. But by writing about the American West or the Ottoman Empire in the 1850s, and by never having been there, and by simply relying on whatever stuff he had read about it, those descriptions, depictions will still be full of like racist stereotypes just by virtue of that.
Oh boy,
So it's an
Starnall
interesting.
asks, how excited are you for the first book about Drift's daughter? It's coming out soon.
I am not reading it. Look, at this point, I don't necessarily care.
That's great.
I suspect it's not going to be good, because from my experience reading like quite a few books, or Salvatore books, I don't think he's well equipped when it comes to writing female main characters. I don't think that's going to work well. But he also means well. I think he's like, in that regard, it's interesting to sort of compare Salvatore to Robert Jordan in that clearly they mean well, but they are very, very unable to sort of like actually step out of that. And then there's like all kinds of other stuff that I feel like ends in there simply by virtue of like not thinking enough about like what you're actually putting down, and then you suddenly have like some very toxic shit going on.
Yeah, it's I mean, I haven't read any of the Drist books, and to be honest, I'm not really that interested in reading them. It seems like one of those like tie-in books that are just like the continuity is kind of ridiculous.
I mean, they are tie-in novels to sell Dungeons and Dragons games. That's what they started out with, and you can tell that. And that's good and that's bad, but it also means that it's not necessarily, at least for a while. At this point, obviously, Salvatore does have like very much like authorial control. He can do whatever the fuck he wants, basically. But in the early books, he kind of had to. I mean, it had to fit like the larger like development of TSR at the time, and where they wanted to take Dungeons and Dragons. So writing tie-in novels for like another franchise already limits or determines the outcome of the product, right? That's just like how that works.
Yeah, it's just kind of, well, maybe Alex will like it. He likes some tie-in books from time to time.
I do read some tie-in fiction from time to time. but most of them aren't worth it unless it's the expanded universe. So, like I read the entire Halo universe, it was not worth it. I could say out of the like 30 books of Halo I read, probably only like 5 of them were worth it. So,
but that's like the beauty of like the old like Star Wars 80s expanded universe was that like at that time they did not actually put in like a lot of like authorial control, which is why you have all these discussions of what is considered canon and what is not, which was like done in hindsight, because at the time they just let like people go completely wild with their imagination of when it came to Star Wars.
What's cool about the expanded universe is that eventually they did go about making pretty much everything fit within a general continuity. They would make retcons, they'd fix things. And so by the time, like right before Disney bought the rights, you had a pretty coherent universe. Like there were hiccups here and there, but for 30 plus years of canon with different authors, it was surprisingly consistent, which was incredible. Yeah. You had a hierarchy where they had G canon, which was George Lucas's 6 films. You had C canon, which was pretty much all the novels and young adult novels. You had S for like the older like 80s, 70s stuff. That was like stuff that doesn't contradict, you can consider canon. If it contradicts, then it's not. And that was pretty much just how they went about going that. So, but it's funny when people say that the EU is never canon, because there was a section of that hierarchy that was considered N for non-canon. Why does that exist if the rest of it is also not canon? It seems a little redundant. But I could talk for days about the EU because I dedicated my channel to that for like 3 years of my life. So.
Yeah, I feel like what I always found interesting with like Star Wars in that regard is that you can kind of see sort of like the creation of like media franchises, and that means like at the beginning they didn't know what the fuck they were doing with the whole thing, and like if you start creating like a franchise nowadays, the franchise owners will put like much stricter, more stringent controls on like what can be in tie-in novels and all of that kind of stuff. But at the beginning with Star Wars, they just like didn't know how to do these things because no one had done them before, and that I think led and Star Wars as a larger franchise has profited from that massively, because a lot of people go like, hey, I read this one crazy Star Wars book, and that's what like kept people engaged with like the larger franchise, and those people
came back and only had 6 movies originally, and that was kind of it. Like George would here and there talk about sequels, but he never really was like confident on that. He pretty much always said like, if you want to know where my story ends, it's 6. If you want anything more, go read the books. Essentially is what he said. Like to him, that stuff's not canon, but for the fans it was meant to be canon. So you had all these stories set after the movies that continue the adventures of the people that you cared about on screen. So it's exciting. Whereas if you read a lot of tie-in fiction of other franchises like with Halo, you really start to notice like, oh, none of the things I'm reading matter because they can't matter. Because if it's going to matter, it's going to be an actual mainline entry. So, but you don't have to worry about that with the EU. You could have characters die in a book because that was your continued story. So that was cool.
Yeah. In that regard, I feel like early Star Wars tie-in novel writing was much closer to like fan fiction than to like the corporate sort of like way of producing tie-in novels that you have nowadays in a lot of ways. And then
some of those are pretty good.
Well, George had to always. He never read like every book, but he did have to get a summary of it and either give a yay or nay on everything that came out. So, that was fine or don't do it was basically his contributions to every novel. But he didn't go out and read everything that happened in between those pages, just kind of the beginning and end of what it was. So.
And no, when I said like it's closer to fan fiction, it's more like in the way it approaches story. That's not a comment on writing, neither on the comment of writing or on the quality of writing in like Star Wars novels, nor the quality of writing that you can find in fan fiction, because it's a broad world out there. But this sort of like you take like your favorite character and you tell their story the way you want to tell it, and then Lucas just goes like, hey, this is fun, this is fine, let's go with it. But like you have like more control because
he did, didn't he? Yeah, he also did I think he also did just recently, I think he did some Halo as well, Jeff.
Steve Perry write some Predator novels, right? Or Alien novels. And Steve Perry also wrote Shadows of the Empire, which was a book in between episode 5 and 6, which introduced a bad guy named Prince Zizor, which gave us one of the most awkward scenes in Star Wars, where because his race uses like these pheromones, and so there's this awkward sexual scene between him and Leia that's uncomfy. And I I guess he writes like that in all of his novels.
You know
so.
what? There's no like speculative fiction is just fucking weird about sex. Like, I mean, just.
But it's fun because he pisses off Vader because he tries to get on Palpatine's good side. So there's some fun banter between Vader and Zizor. So.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'm gonna get myself one more beer, and after that, I'll probably run away because sleep and all of that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what happens at heavy metal festivals. Is what I'm saying.
Ori, so the Shadows of the Empire was a multimedia project. So they made a soundtrack for it. They made a comics for it. They made a video game for it, and they made a novel. So it's not based on the video game. The video game's just based on the multimedia project of getting all those different avenues out there for that one project. So Shadows of the Empire was meant to be on all those different things to get the hype up for it. So.
Yeah, no, I enjoy what was I gonna say? But yeah, science fiction and fantasy in general are just fucking weird when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
Like read like fucking Conan or like Elric and like and fucking just basically anything from like before the 90s and 2000s. Remember, like, okay, we get our act together. This is how we're writing about sex.
Yeah.
Like, I read Gore. I read the first book of Gore, which is from John Norman. It's a very like sexist fantasy series from back in it's basically like BDSM John Carter of Mars, Yeah, it's not good. I don't recommend it, but it's a lot of fun if you want to laugh at just how hilariously sexist it is.
Which one?
Gore, from John.
Yeah.
From what the hell is that guy's name? John Norman.
Yeah.
But what I was talking about, Ref, is that hey, no fucking slander about the Frost Giant's daughter.
Oh god, don't remind me of the Frost Giant's daughter. That one and the one where they described black people as having frog lips almost made me stop reading the Conan stories. I was like, I don't know if I could continue. I was like, I can't. It was bothering me so much.
It was written in the 30s. All right, it was written in the fucking 30s.
I know. And a lot of the stories are actually good, so that's why I was like so caught off. I was when I finally got to that one. I was like, what's happening?
I'll admit, it did throw me off when Conan says it was his duty as a white man to save the white lady from the black pirates in the one story. What was it called?
Queen of the Black Coast.
I don't think it was Queen of the Black Coast. I think it was like Veil of the Dark Women or something like that. I'm like,
it's Whale of the I don't know if they're called Dark Women. It's Whale of the, but that's the one that is so incredibly racist, even for like Robert E. Howard.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, yeah, that line.
That's like the one where.
Oh god, that's so. I get it. It was written in the 30s. Oh man. Oh god.
Whale of the Lost Women. That's the title.
Veil of the Lost Women. Thank you.
It's a weird one. There's some like really, really, really bad stuff in like the Conan stories, like the Shadows over Zambala is another one that has extreme like racism in it, with like the whole cannibal stuff. It's really bad. Then there's like other stuff that is much better in that regard. Frost Giant's daughter is definitely problematic in the whole like
I think it's a great story, even though it is a bit sus.
It is a great story. It is incredibly well written because Robert E. Howard is was an amazing writer, but it's still like the story is basically man fights, women tempt him, so he has the right to just go and
she was kind of like a siren, wasn't she? Like if I recall,
she is very much the kind. She's very much a siren in that regard.
Which
yes.
like okay, that's a little problematic, but it's not like he just going like I'm gonna fuck the shit out of this random woman, Which, even though it is kind of what it is. At the same, it's really weird.
It is very much. I mean, there's so much that could be said about like the weird sexual hang-ups of like Robert E. Howard, but like I think at the core, it is the story about like women being temptresses and men being incapable of resisting that temptation, which is something that you find once again. It's the same narrative that you find in victim blaming nowadays, when it's like, well, shouldn't have dressed like that, should she, and so forth, right? It is the same logic. It's just like dressed up in fantasy stuff here, and that. But it's important to understand that is the core logic of the Frost Giant's daughter.
Yeah, it's just hard when you're supposed to be like rooting for Conan, and then he's like going after a girl that clearly doesn't want it. So it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I heard in some of the later stories it does get a little awkward at points with like the race and gender stuff.
But that is why you were talking about. I forget. I think Britton, you said it earlier when it came to pulps, like people writing pulps, but like modern. So, you're going through Malazan for the first time, and you're like, "Oh, Guardians of the Moon, not my favorite cup of tea." That's fine, but when you get to book 4, you get essentially Conan, but way deeper, and actually criticizing some of those aspects of a character, like going after a woman that doesn't want you. So you get those aspects, but it's actually treated with respect, I guess. So.
I think it's what is so interesting about this for me is like to actually figure out what makes a like classic pulp story. What is like sort of like the essence of pulp in that regard? Is it the adventure stuff? Does it have to have that specific sort of really weird objectification of women in there? And there's economic reasons for being objectifying women there, because it's like if you have like a scene where like that one woman is whipping the other woman, you'll get the cover, and then you get like paid a little more for your story. And if you're paid like very late
for the hassle. You get paid for the hassle. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, but like if you look at like you read like letters of like people like Howard or Lovecraft or Clark Ashton Smith, when despite besides the whole stuff where they are all insanely anti-Semitic against Hugo Gernsback.
Oh, you mean H.P. Lovecraft? Because he fucking hated Hugo Gernsback.
Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith. There's a really good article that kind of goes through the whole like thing and Gernsback in that regard. Ori shared that with me like months ago. I need to find the link, but I can send it to you. And my point was more that when you look at this, a lot of these people were incredibly poor and struggling and paid very poorly, very badly, and very late. And so making a story that does get you paid slightly more is very much necessary in a lot of ways. And that ties over to today. It's like people doing clickbait stuff on the internet, because that's kind of what the same thing is. If like every cent counts, then writing in like a weirdly sexual scene, because it does maybe give you like $5 more for them, like for your like next month, is it's like is a temptation in its own right. And it's understandable to see how those structural elements led to that specific sort of objectification of women in pulp stories in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'll admit I was a little burned out on epic fantasy, so I'm probably gonna. You know what I'm gonna do, since we're having all this Conan talk, I might see if I can catch up with Conan in 2026. We'll see how that goes. Maybe read the second Del Rey volume I have. We'll see how it goes.
I'm almost done with reading all the Elric books. I think I have, because there's the 3-book collection.
Have you gotten the real convoluted stuff yet? When he's like,
plenty of
champion and all that.
Oh yeah, plenty of that. I'm on the last collection that has the first story in it is the Dream Thief's daughter. So that's my next one.
Nice.
So, and then I got to read all the Witcher books before I play the video games again. So,
like Elric's strange because it's like kind of the first like postmodern sort of deconstruction of like pulp. Before all the like pulp people, before all the people who like grew up, before like the new wave showed up and were like, hey, here are all these fun pulp concepts we liked when we were kids, but we're going to be literary, with, varying results, of course.
Well, that's clearly, that's what Michael Moorcock ended up being involved in, is exactly that, right? Because he edited like what's that magazine that he edited, and like he published like J.G. Ballard and stuff while writing Elric's stories. So he's very clearly already in that sort of like headspace in a lot of ways, and that's kind of what makes but once again explains his like epic poo essay, because that's where he's at that point. But like it's
kind of what kind of bothers me about Moorcock is he's always real obsessed with like subverting expectations, and you're like, dude, you don't have to fucking subvert things all the time. Sometimes it works and sometimes it don't.
Yeah, but like
in my
depending,
opinion, I'm not saying this is how you should do it. I'm just saying that's just how I see it. There's
Yeah.
some tropes that work for a reason, Michael. Also, Lord of the Rings isn't that bad. Like, calm down.
but that's kind of the point that he's like making in Epic Boot that people kind of miss, sort of like often miss. He's saying, well, Lord of the Rings isn't like the best book ever written, but the problem is all the people that read Lord of the Rings and then decide to copy Tolkien and are not Tolkien are making it even worse. He's much more concerned with like those people, right?
So you're not saying he blasts Tolkien for stuff that's just completely superfluous, like his style being too condescending, which, like, what the hell does that even fucking mean? Like, okay.
Well,
Which, like, sure, I see where he's coming from in context of the essay. It's just kind of like, it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like,
his language being condescending. You have a bunch of situations where the way he's writing about specific people, or the way he's addressing the audience, can come across as condescending.
Well, I kind of view it as kind of like a storybook thing. Now, if Moorcock doesn't really like that, that's his fucking business. But it's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but
I guess why do you not give the benefit of the doubt? Why do you assume it's condescending? I have a
lot of mixed feelings about Epic Pooh. I'll just leave it at that. I think he brings up a lot of interesting points, but there's a lot of other points he makes that I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Also, if you're that fucking offended by the supposed condescension in Tolkien's work, why the fuck do you praise J.K. Rowling then? Because she has
that one has not aged well. Harry
Potter. There's so much of that kind of Little England stuff in Harry Potter. What are you talking about?
I think like the J.K. Rowling thing has not aged well at all, and I would be surprised if he would still stand by that. I haven't checked because
though he does like Terry Pratchett. Apparently,
he does love Terry Pratchett.
Who doesn't like Terry Pratchett?
Though I read a comment from him the other day because he's on the Moorcock Facebook page. I'm also on the Moorcock Facebook page, which is a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun people on there. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I think Terry would have worked better as a children's author or something like that. Maybe he was being snarky, but who knows?
I love the quote about Terry Pratchett when he's mentioning other Terrys. He might also name Terry, mention Terry Goodkind by name, but he's like Terry Pratchett, who seems to be the only Terry in Fantasyland who's able to write a complex sentence. That is just like I like Epic Pooh for its like snarkiness.
What bothers me about Epic Pooh though is like as many like as much as there are good points he makes in that essay about like I think Tolkien Tolkien who kind of holds, I do think Tolkien holds people back, holds fantasy back sometimes. I do agree with that. But just like the idea of like just like some of his issues with the style is basically just him going like, why is Tolkien so big and all these other authors I like aren't? It's like, all right, why is fucking King of Elfland's Daughter not as famous as Tolkien? That's not Tolkien's fault.
No, but there is a question to be asked, like what is specific about Tolkien that makes his book so successful and makes everyone in the 60s and 70s and 80s, well, particularly in the 70s and then 80s, want to sort of like emulate or copy Tolkien's formula to write a successful book? What makes
like Wheel of Time?
What are the sort of like key elements on what kind of ideas do you take with that if you just copy Tolkien without being critical about it? That's kind of the point. Like you can read like Stephen R. Donaldson. I have my issues with like the Thomas Covenant stories.
And look, I'm not saying like Tolkien's like perfect, be all of fantasy. It's just I think that Moorcock mischaracterizes Tolkien stuff sometimes, or at least I felt he did in Epic Pooh from time to time.
He's certainly very critical, and I'm not sure if I would subscribe to all of his points that he makes about Tolkien, but the argument, the way I'm reading it right now, and this may change over time, is like, he goes, well, Tolkien is incredibly successful. A lot of people are copying Tolkien and are ignoring all the other things that are possible in fantasy. That is bad, because if we just like have like one inspiration, that kind of ruins like a genre over time. But also, we might want to look at like what we are buying when we are sort of like continuing that specific idea, and that means we need to take Tolkien apart and like deconstruct Tolkien's writings and ideas and look for these ideas, because if we are not aware of these ideas, we may just like take a lot of the conservatism into our books, even though we might not actually be conservative writers ourselves. We just like take that stuff with us because we don't actually engage with it critically, and that's an important point today to make, and that's something that was very much lacking in sort of like larger fantasy discourse in the 70s, or well, not completely lacking, but certainly having someone with like the audience of
I agree with that. I'm not
bringing that up.
Like I said, mixed feelings about Epic Pooh. I don't think it's like a load of crap or anything. I don't think it's like completely meaningless. I do think there's a lot of interesting points that he brings up that I think not enough people consider. But nonetheless, I think some of his criticisms of Tolkien are misguided at best. I'll cut him a bone here. But it's like, hey, it's fine if you like Fritz Leiber and Robert E. Howard. Like, I like those guys too. It's just like, you know, when you complain that Tolkien's famous and those two guys aren't, even though Robert E. Howard is probably the most influential fantasy writer that isn't Tolkien.
Yeah,
you know,
I think
that out of the way. But it's just kind of like, it's like, come on, man.
I think it's fair to critique Tolkien. I do think.
I think it is good to critique Tolkien. I think it's good to try and move past what Tolkien is doing. I think
for sure, because you can only do that for so long.
But yeah, exactly.
But what I find so interesting about Epic Pooh in that regard is that people reading it now and talking about it now, and it's easy to fall into that trap. Is like that Tolkien has become such sort of like cult. There is that Tolkien cult up to a point where it's like people are reading Epic Pooh and that has all these points to make about the larger sort of like history of fantasy and all of that stuff, and they go like, "Oh, he was so mean to my god, J.R. Tolkien. Clearly, this entire essay is worthless because I can nitpick this one thing that he got maybe wrong about Tolkien." And I'm like, if you're reading it that way, you kind of make Wilcox's point for him, because you know, it's like, are we putting Tolkien on like a pedestal that makes it impossible to criticize him in like the broader conversation? It's a bit less so when you read like Tolkien scholarship, although there are, you know, clearly there's a lot of like hero worship going on there as well. But I think it's important to, you know, Tolkien's just another guy and just another author, and you know who would actually agree with that? J.R. Tolkien, who was very, very critical of his own works and his own writing.
Yes, notoriously so.
Almost to the point of absurdity, to where when he died, his son's like, "Well, shit, I guess I'll have to put all this crap together and put it out in a few years." And then die.
I think the core difference, especially as I've been reading Conan, which is not all of Sword and Sorcery, but is a big proponent of it.
It's definitely the trope codifier, as they would say on TV tropes.
I think it's just that it's of its time, like as we discussed some of those things earlier. But whereas Tolkien, a kid could read that in 2025 and feel just of a magical experience without any real big hiccups, like saying racist things or sexist things as much in that text. Which kind of transcends time. And I think that's what makes it stand out apart from other works around the same time period, because it doesn't fall into those sort of hiccups that a lot of works back then do.
I mean, to be fair, Tolkien gets around the whole objectifying women thing by basically having no women in his books. That does certainly make it easier. Like you read The Hobbit. The Hobbit does not have a single
we called him a
female character saying anything. There's like no female character in The Hobbit. Does have like, or maybe Lobelia Sackville Baggins.
What about the spiders?
But that's the thing. Like, that's notable in its own right? It's like, hey, it's a different aspect of sexism, right? It's like there's just like no female characters in this entire book.
Yeah.
And the fact that it took me like 3 readings to realize that is like says a lot about, you know.
Yeah. It's all gradual, I guess, and. That's what it goes on.
Well, like, interestingly, but apparently Tolkien read the Conan stories and said some nice things about some of the Conan stuff. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, here's another thing. It's like he called, and he's probably just saying this to get a rise out of people, because I know that Epic Pooh was also in part him kind of poking fun at Tolkien and kind of pissing people off. But he called Tolkien a crypto-fascist. And I'm just like, okay, buddy. I mean, he literally sent a note to the literal Nazis telling them to fuck off when they're like, hey, are you Jewish? And he's basically like, well, no.
No, but I'd be honored to
I'm
be.
not part of No, but it would be a great honor to be a part of those people. Go fuck yourself, basically.
Well, that's okay. Two things, and quickly, I have not yet read Last King of Ostenard. I want to. I wanted to read all of them, like the first Ostenard stuff, and then the Last King of Ostenard in one go, and then the final book got pushed back by a year, and then I got sidetracked. So I have read, obviously, the first one, the Memory, Sorrow, Thorn, several times. I have read the what's it called? The sort of like novella novel thing. I mean, it's an old in between. Just can't remember the name right now. The heart of all that was lost. That's the one. I love that one. That was really good. So I'm excited to read Last King of Ostenard. It will happen sometime. I already have all the books, so it's more like me having like being able to focus on it. But then it will happen. But to go back to the Tolkien things, like there's a difference between being a fascist and being a Nazi. Though they are adjacent, but Tolkien was not a racist. But that doesn't mean that he does not certainly have that he does not, up to a point, have ideas that are at least compatible with an authoritarian sort of like structure in some ways. Tolkien himself described himself either as a monarchist or an anarchist, and I believe that's how he thought about it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't, certain elements in there that are, like the whole thing of like having a chosen king that is like very clearly better than other people. That is built into Tolkien's world, and you have that with Aragorn, right? You have those kind of things.
I would say he was kind of. I would kind of say that if you want to call Tolkien anything, he was just kind of He was an old school Tory conservative.
Well, I think it also had more to do with his faith more so than his politics when it comes to certain things, like having an absolute king and stuff like that in charge. As much as he wants to bash his friend C.S. Lewis, he was equally as devout, and he was just a bit more subtle about how he put those things into his book. But I think a lot of that stuff, like having an ultimate king that's better, is not
the allegory in Narnia. He didn't like
that.
He felt the allegory was heavy-handed.
But stuff like Aragorn as king, I don't think is meant to be like, ooh, this is how we should structure a government. I think it's more just an allusion to his faith than anything else.
I think it's kind of both, because those two things are obviously connected. I mean, there's an idea about like a divine right of kings, right? The word divine is in there. And the problem is not so much, and that kind of goes back to the thing we talked about much earlier, right? But when we were talking about Warhammer and stuff like that, it's like Tolkien probably never thought about himself as a fascist. I very much agree with that. But a lot of the stuff he wrote is very accessible to fascism, which have the whole like stuff in Italy.
I have heard
when the neo-fascists started their Camp Hobbits and used Tolkien to like Middle Earth and stuff to recruit other people. That is not necessarily Tolkien's fault, because he definitely wouldn't have wanted that. I'm pretty sure of that. But it is sort of like, once again, a reason why you need to look at the stuff that he put in there by virtue of like his sort of like larger level, larger beliefs and understandings of the world. And I think that is sort of like where you can get the crypto fascist in there, because I don't think he was planning to do that, but it's like a lot of this stuff can be very useful.
The only argument you could use for Tolkien being a so-called crypto fascist is I have heard, I don't know if it's true or not. Maybe Raph knows a little more about this than I do, because he's generally more educated on the political beliefs of authors.
He's a smart guy.
But I did hear he did support the Francoists in the Spanish Civil War. Like that's like the only instance I could think of, and I don't even know if it's true, because Franco was a Catholic and all, and pretty conservative.
I can see that in there. I don't know if it's true either, but that's not the point. You don't have to be a crypto fascist. You don't have to openly support fascists to be a crypto fascist. It's about like stuff that you put into your books that can be read by fascists as going like, yeah, this is very much what we want.
That might not even have
But
been what Tolkien intended, though.
Well, I
That's
was
the
going to
thing.
No, of
say
course not,
earlier,
but that's
Rap
the
was
point.
talking about people like right-leaning people ignoring things and then accepting other parts of the text to kind of
Yeah.
have their own narrative into it. So couldn't a fascist do the same
That's
thing
not
with his work
Tolkien's
and
fault,
ignore other
though.
parts that contradict
Like
a
Moorcock kind of
fascist
makes
world?
it in the kind of says in the essay that, or actually, I don't think he talks about that in Epic Pooh. But anyway, he kind of just makes it sound like it's Tolkien's fault. I'm like, just
I mean,
because
it is.
Tolkien put that in there, and some fucking racist idiots took that to mean that, oh, this is base, we should make a society out of this. That does not make Tolkien a fascist. I'm sorry.
Right? Because wouldn't that be the same token as the right-leaning people reading wrong things into the sci-fi text to say, well, then that sci-fi author is also this because some right-leaning people think of that.
That's the point. It is still important to talk about the fact that Tolkien's books are so popular and accessible to right-leaning people, and we need to look at like the, you know, that stuff is in there. That's not calling Tolkien a fascist. That's going like, well, this text does have like a lot of unfortunate things in there, and we need to make we need to look at that. And that goes back to the whole like, are we defending these books because we just really really love Tolkien, or are we thus incapable of actually critically engaging with the text because the person of Tolkien is just so sacrosanct within fantasy discourse that we are incapable of doing that, and that kind of goes to the heart of like what I think like why I feel that Moorcock is so aggressive against Tolkien is that he's like, you know, doing the
Or
thing
aggressively critical. I do think there is. I don't know if he like hates Tolkien. I think that's been overblown. I do think he respects Tolkien's contribution, even if he personally is like, yeah, not my thing.
But you know, it's the thing, like you can't be an iconoclast without breaking some idols. That's kind of in the title. You know what I mean? And that's sort of like where I see Epic Pooh is supposed to, you know, be, you know, to provoke people. That's kind of the point of the whole thing. And the fact that most people are not getting over that because they focus on supposed insults to the person of J.R. Tolkien and ignore all the other stuff, for me, makes it very clear that we need more of that, and that this is a necessary text, because it does, just by being there and provoking these reactions, it does show that there is a problem. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
And we haven't even talked about how he attacks my personal hero A.A. Milne and Winnie the Pooh, which is like the much bigger crime in Epic Pooh, from where I'm standing.
Think.
No, it's I don't know. Like I said, I'm very mixed on the essay. I think there's a lot of it definitely taught me a lot about, you know, fantasy literature, and that it's not just Tolkien, that there is like other movements of fantasy out there. But nonetheless, I do think that there are some parts of that essay that not only I disagree with, but I think are just either wrong or very misguided. But then again, he wrote it when he was, when it first came out, like the 70s.
Which one? That
Epic
came
Pooh.
out like 70. Epic Pooh came out in like 78 or 7, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure Michael Moorcock's like, there's probably things I would change in it now.
I mean, he did update it, because he did not write about Harry Potter in 1977.
Yes, this is true, Samwise. It basically him just ripping on Tolkien's writing style and C.S. Lewis's writing style and like Richard Adams' writing style, basically. And there's probably a few others I can't remember at the moment, but those like main three, yeah.
I agree, Samwise, but the point that Tolkien that Moorcock is making is that specific writing style is tied to a specific sort of like political ideology. That's the point he was making, and you know, that's kind of hard to do. It's the kind of thing that a lot of like literary critics do all the time, but it's a very different approach, and that's kind of where the whole like condescending language kind of comes in, because Tolkien's writing does have those elements, right? It is sometimes talking down to the audience. It is about like having an enlightened elite sort of like leading the virtuous common people and so forth. That stuff is, according to that specific idea of reading, which is literary theory and so forth. It does sort of like make it important to talk about the writing style and like choice of words and the way something is phrased, because that is an expression of a larger political idea, because you are guiding your audience. You are talking to your audience in a specific way. And it's important to look at that as well.
I really do think, though, even if there is some sort of political thing going on in Tolkien's mind, that a lot of that stuff is definitely, to me, more attributed to his faith behind that than anything else. Like the virtuous and the they're in Tolkien's world, or in Game of Thrones, it's all morally gray and relative because there is no right or wrong. But in Lord of the Rings, there's objective right, objective wrong, and objective good and objective bad, because it's just how the world is structured is all.
Can I rant a little bit about this thought process on Game of Thrones? I mean, if Raph wants to pipe in real quick on the Tolkien thing, I would like to rant about Game of Thrones and this misconception.
You can absolutely you can absolutely rant about Game of Thrones. I think it's still relevant to talk about that because the way language works hasn't changed, and being aware of those kind of things is important. So I do still believe that, but I understand that it's a very academic sort of approach to literary criticism that a lot of people in like bookish discourse on YouTube, TikTok or whatever, we are not equipped to do, because most of us haven't studied literary theory. Like, I haven't studied literary theory. Yes, I've read a couple of books on the subject, so I at least understand what Moorcock is trying to do, but most of us haven't. And that's part of the problem. And that there's an elitism kind of problem going on, that there's one elite that is able to make those kind of critical points about the other group being elitist in the way that they write. And that's what we're talking about there. And I guess you need to read Bourdieu to understand that part, but it's complicated. But please rant about Game of Thrones. I'm always happy if someone rants about Game of Thrones.
So Game of Thrones. A lot of people like to say that Game of Thrones is about like how there's no objective good and evil. That is nonsense. There is a whole there are good and evil characters in Game of Thrones. It is just more complicated than what you'd find in fucking what you'd find in like Lord of the Rings or whatever. I haven't read Winnie the Pooh, Raph, so I don't know anything about that. So I won't say anything about Winnie the Pooh.
There is one
Narnia for that matter.
The story. Yeah. Read the one Winnie the Pooh story where Kanga and Roo come into the. That one is really funny. No, the story about Kanga and Roo coming to the forest, and does it end? It has like a longer title, and it's the story about Kanga and Roo coming into the forest, and Rabbit wanting to kick them out of the forest. So he's explaining like how they don't belong and stuff like that. It's very Nazi. It's very Nazi. Rabbit going like, yeah, and she carries her offspring in her pocket. Where would we be if we all would do that? And so forth. And you have like Piglet being all scared of like anything new. So Piglet fully agrees with Rabbit, and Winnie the Pooh being kind of bored by Rabbit talking. So he just like says yes and no alternately. So it looks like he's still paying attention. And so when Rabbit decides that they need to kick them out of the forest, Pooh just said accidentally says yes. So he's in on that plot when they kidnap baby Roo to force Kanga to leave the forest. That is pretty fucking heavy for like a children's book written in the 1920s.
That's actually insane. I want to adjust. When I say moral relativism, I didn't mean to necessarily say that there are not like objective horrible people in Game of Thrones. What I mean is that with the way that George R. R. Martin's beliefs are, there is no objective absolute evil. There are the White Walkers. There are objectively worse people than other people in Game of Thrones, but there's no underlying morality that is being structured throughout the whole piece.
I disagree. This is what my rant is going to be about.
Okay.
And, maybe I'll make a video. Maybe I'll make a video about this at some point. Maybe like a Fate of Fantasy episode. But I don't know. I am definitely going to do a Fate of Fantasy episode about Epic Poo. I just need to. Well, I'm going to get Raph on there for sure. I don't know who else. I'd like to get some other people on for that. For whenever I do that, that's probably going to be a little later down the line. I want to drop that on people immediately.
I think. I mean, I agree. I think I agree with you, Alex. There, like, I don't think. Like Tolkien's worldview is very much guided by his writing, by his faith, right? And I think it's important to see how like Tolkien, sort of like came to sort of like Catholicism, which is not necessarily, the mainstream choice in England. So, and it took him a while to get there. So like Tolkien's writing guided by his faith and his experience in World War One. So the understanding that there is absolute evil is key to his worldview, and that reflects in the Lord of the Rings. That there are those absolute poles of good and evil, and obviously there's like a lot of like when you read the Silmarillion, there's like a ton of parallels to like Paradise Lost in there, with the whole like Melkor being sort of like basically like Lucifer, and there's a lot of that stuff in there, but there is a fundamental understanding that there is a good side and there's a bad side, and you can go from one to the other, but there are poles at each end of that spectrum, and those people are absolute evil and absolute good, and you can't change that, and that's something that I think is absent from Game of Thrones, because you don't have that. You have, because it Game of Thrones.
Yes, that's because Martin plays with perception. He's not saying that it's necessarily these like. Okay, if you're saying like in Game of Thrones there isn't like an absolute like morality where there is no absolute good, there is no like Sauron. Like the closest thing to like a Sauron is probably the White Walkers, and even then, I don't know if if you're saying that, then okay, I'll agree with you.
But aren't the White Walkers just like a force of nature at the end of the day?
Yeah,
pretty much, yeah.
So you can't really call them evil in Game of Thrones.
That's why I said the closest thing to absolute evil. Yeah, I don't think again.
I mean, you could read them as a very crude metaphor for climate change if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, and even George R.R. Martin has said that, so it's not it's not complete tinfoil hat territory.
I think like the why I would say that there is no absolute good and evil in like Game of Thrones or the Song of Ice and Fire is that it does not have like an overarching objective cosmology, right? Like with Middle Earth, you have the creation thing, you have Iluvatar, you have the Valar, you have that whole thing, and that is objectively what happened. With Game of Thrones,
in that world,
that is that is like the framework in which all the stories take place, and you don't have that with Game of Thrones, because you have the old gods, you have the Sept or whatever they're called, you have all of those things, but it's never made clear if those are actual like divinities or this is just sort of like an abstract concept. It is very much like a secular novel, like series in that regard. It does not ever touch those aspects that are metaphysical. And the understanding of good and evil in Lord of the Rings is a question of metaphysics, and that I think makes a difference for me, I would say.
You explained my thought process much smarter, but I agree with that.
Well, okay, if that's what you're saying, I'll agree with you on that. But what always bothers me when people go like, there is no morality in Game of Thrones, it's all just people killing each other. It's like, no. The thing that Game of Thrones does, that the morality of Game of Thrones that a lot of people don't seem to notice, either they don't notice or they don't seem to, and they're just being, bad faith, which I don't. I like to. I'll give people benefit of the doubt here, but the whole thing of Game of Thrones, the whole theme of Game of Thrones, is that your actions have consequences. It does not matter if you are good. It does not matter if you're bad. It doesn't matter what intentions you might have. What you do will define what is going to happen. I mean, how does Game of Thrones even spark off? Because there was one guy who figured out something, that figured out a really big secret about the queen. He gets executed because of certain choices he makes and certain choices he does not make. And sometimes the world is just an unfair place. Chaos.
But that's kind of the problem, right? Because it is at its core.
That's how history is, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you finish. Sorry, Raph, I'll let you finish your point. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. But I think in that regard, and that's part of the problem, right? Like it is, if you can apply any like ethical framework to A Song of Ice and Fire, it's a utilitarian one. It's like you need to base your choices on what brings the best, like the maximum good for everyone. It's very much that. It's not deontological in that like your motives matter. It's like Kant would hate this book, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and not that I'm like a big fan of Kant, but I think there is a danger with utilitarianism to sort of like slide into some really, really problematic places. And there's like a level of cynicism to Game of Thrones in that regard, because it's like clearly Ned Stark is the good guy. He's clearly like the one who has actually, morals and everything.
He's got morals, but he pays for it.
Yeah, he's got morals, but because he's not doing the politically clever thing, he's not compromising his morals, and that's why he dies, and that's why shit goes down. And that's
the thing people don't bring up. But the thing people don't bring up is that yes, he's not very politically savvy because he's a North guy. They don't fucking care about any of that stuff. But he has people who will follow him to the edge of the earth. Could you say the same thing about Tywin Lannister? No. So it's not just like it's all up in the fucking air. It's that your actions matter.
But the thing behind that, though, is I guess what I'm trying to say, like, so people will back Ned Stark because he inspires loyalty. Absolutely. But does that mean that Ned Stark is actually right? The world of Game of Thrones does not provide a framework to actually say that. It's just, what do you prefer when you're watching as a viewer? And most people are going to view Ned Stark as, I like this guy. But there's no way to say that's subjectively right in Game of Thrones because they don't have a framework to make that a reality.
I don't know. It's like, who comes better off? I mean, Tywin Lannister was a ruthless snake of a man. And look what happened to him. He dies in a very humiliating fashion. His son doesn't want anything to do with politics. His other son killed him. And his daughter is a power-hungry maniac who just... I'm not even going to go into what fucking Cersei's doing because she's fucking crazy.
I think this would be better answered if there was...
Years after he dies, who will go...
If there was a conclusion, I think we could better acknowledge whatever Martin is going for.
Towards, be honorable towards people. Sorry.
I'm sure. But since we don't have a conclusion, it's kind of hard to know how that would play out.
This is true. Yes.
In this world.
Yeah, but I think that like that overarching moral framework, it just can't have that because it's very postmodern in that regard. And I think it's the other part is that it goes like, well, clearly having moral integrity does win you loyalty, but because the world is kind of shit. Loyalty only gets you this far, and at some point you need to compromise your moral integrity, or
to stay alive for the Game of Thrones.
Yeah. and in like Tolkien would have like a very clear answer there. Like even Robert fucking Howard would have like a very clear answer that like sticking to your principles is worth dying and so forth. And because and that's because they come from like different moral frameworks. And George R. Martin being utilitarian goes, well, but like Ned Stark's actions lead to hundreds of thousands of people dying. So clearly that was not the right choice to make at that point. Or was it, right? And that's where you end up with that like moral grayness that you can't fully resolve.
That's why it's relative, because it's up to the reader to ultimately
decide.
Take these pieces together and decide for themselves. Whereas Tolkien would give you that framework and an answer.
Exactly. It's like Aragorn makes mistakes, but Aragorn is a good guy. Yeah. Aragorn makes mistakes. But Aragorn and he does pay, well, people do pay for his mistakes when it comes to, the stuff with Gollum or whatever, right? They make mistakes, but it is unambiguous that Aragorn is objectively a good person. That is just like built in.
Yeah, because of the framework of Tolkien and the Silmarillion and Iluvatar, it's very much like the Bible where, Aragorn makes mistakes. When he's making mistakes, he's not falling after Iluvatar. When he's making the right choices and the right decisions, he's basically going along Iluvatar's path, right? And that's how you know the framework of what is right, what is wrong. Are you steering closer to this, or are you steering further away? In Game of Thrones, we don't have that, so it's up to us.
I mean, you read the Old Testament, it's the same thing. Like Moses makes lots of fucking mistakes, but he's still, at the end of the day, he's still.
He does make one critical mistake that keeps him from the promised land. So I mean,
Or David with Bathsheba.
Yeah,
it was not something God wanted, but it's something that David decided to do.
Yeah, but that still does. At the end of the day, David's still a good guy.
Yeah.
And I think that is like the thing that you can't have with Game of Thrones, because we don't have that like cosmological metaphysical framework that in which the whole world and storytelling is embedded. There is no final answer because there's no official statement. This is God or like this is the divine force and that's what you need to do. And what I find so interesting is to tie it back to Wheel of Times, is that Wheel of Times does very much struggle with that, because Wheel of Times does try to do like the thing that Game of Thrones does, while also having
objective good and evil.
having objective good and evil, and a lot of the problems that the series develops over time comes from Robert Jordan trying to
have his cake and eat it too.
get those two things to kind of come together, and it's not easy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because the way Real Time has done it, or at least from what I've read so far, you have the objective things, and those are like the larger things, like the big bad guy. But then you have on the smaller scale, but like kind of what all of us humans deal with on the day to day is we can't really see that objective, that spiritual world, because we're just living the mundane reality. So the day to day politics is where you get the more nuanced, more relative approach.
Yeah, but
as opposed to
yes, and at the same time, you also still have like the tapestry, like the weave or whatever it's called, the Wheel of Time, which is outside of the control of the Dark One and the Creator, and it's sort of like going like, hey, I have this stuff from like my Christian upbringing with God and the devil and all of that, but I'm also really fascinated by my probably not too deep understanding of Hinduism and Buddhism, and I'm trying to work both into like one cosmology, and those two things really grind up against each other over time, and it's interesting to see that happen, but it takes someone much more skilled as a thinker and writer than Robert Jordan was to actually resolve that in a satisfying way, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we still need those other 2 books to come out for Game of Thrones before I can finally go like, aha, here's my thesis on A Song of Ice and Fire.
And will it happen?
But
probably not.
I guess my irritation is I am so fucking tired of people saying that it's just all up in the fucking air. It's like, no, it's not.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're also silly who say that. It's a more nuanced discussion on that.
Yeah.
Then again, I haven't read Wheel of Time. In all honesty, I don't really want to.
I mean,
there's some pretty good bits in there.
Finish it,
I fucking want to.
I very much understand that approach.
I don't want to.
I think that there's some really, really good. I had like all those books before I bought all of them, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna finish this thing because I already paid for it, so I understand that approach. No, but there are some good bits and pieces in Wheel of Time, like
sure.
He's really good. He's really good at like cosmic horror. Like the stuff he does in Shadow Logoth is really cool. The stuff he does with like the ways paths, whatever they're called, the ways, right? That stuff like with that like that disembodied wind, that shit's really cool. Like he's really good at doing like cosmic horror. I wish he would have done more of that.
So far, my favorite character Wheel of Time is Matt, but he hasn't done much yet. But he's fun.
He does have some really interesting things happening later on.
Fucking like 15 books. I'm like, damn, dude, I don't want to do that.
Well, once I did Malazan, I realized I could do anything. So
I'd be relentlessly talked into doing Malazan. I don't want to fucking go through 15 books.
Malazan's definitely a better way to spend your time. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's true.
At least
If
first
you have
law
to
is a
pick
trilogy.
between the two.
Damn. I was like, at least the first law is a trilogy. I mean, goddamn.
But I'm also a weirdo that's read over like 200 Star Wars books. But but they're also like short, so it's not as bad.
So it's not like a complete waste of time. Yeah.
Look, biggest fan. I agree. Like the Dunk and Egg stories are really cool. They're fun. They're like much more sort of constrained in what they're doing. I think that really helps. And that
It's
really
I kind of view it as his take on like Foffer and the Grey Mouser a little bit. So I can
There
see
is-
you liking
there-
those stories.
there is certainly that in there.
Not as horny though.
The thing
Sorry.
is, both George R. R. Martin and Fritz Leiber can get really, really horny. And I don't want to like judge that competition.
That's why I said not as horny. They do chase tail from time to time in Dunk and
Well,
Egg, but not
yeah,
quite
that's
as
true.
much as Foffer and the Grey Mouser.
I think like there's like no, but like Dunk and Egg and structure wise, I think is a really cool thing, and because it has like a different story structure, it's more like individual adventures of, and I think that also that really lends itself to like doing like a TV series show about it, because you can just like focus on one story and then do the next, and I think that works really well in that regard. So yeah,
It's going to be turned into a TV show, which I am looking forward to because man, those are fun stories. But yeah, no, I will read Dead House Gates, so don't worry, Malzahn fans who were chomping at the bits, wondering if I'm gonna keep going. I will read Dead House Gates. We'll see how that goes. So
Can't wait.
It goes some
wait.
really dark places,
Yes.
but don't worry, it has. Don't worry, it does have a happy ending though.
Yes. Well,
I was about to say, are you guys being sarcastic? Because I've heard the opposite. Actually, I've heard people crying at the end of Dead House Gates. So I kind of feel it's a sad story.
Yeah. Well,
But the dog survives. The dog survives, and that's
that's
good.
good. Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah.
Dog surviving. Yeah, that's always good.
I think pretty much all your complaints though will be solved with that second book.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say I was really mixed on Gardens of the Moon, which I was warned that it was gonna kind of throw me off a little bit. It was kind of funny. I started reading Gardens. I'm like, this isn't that complicated. Like, I get what's going on. Just pay attention. You'll be fine. And then it's just like more stuff just keeps going on. I'm just like, oh my god. Okay, all right, I see it now. But
yeah, no, it's a much more self-contained too. You have 3 characters in one spot. You have an army in another, and then 2 characters from the first book, and that's kind of the whole shebang. So 3 characters, 4, something like that. Anyway, it's a much smaller cast, much easier to follow, and it's a lot more structured. So,
like and like everyone's motives are very clear from the beginning, and you jump between those characters from chapter to chapter, whereas in like Gardens you have like the first part is about the bridge burners, then you come to book 2 and suddenly you're like in Darujistan and you're like, so what's up with all the other people that we just write about for like the last 100 pages, and then you jump to like the next thing. Whereas in Dead
give
House
them
Gates,
credit, it does come together. It's just like, why the fuck should I care about any of this, you know?
Yeah. And I think 2 will also change that for you much faster.
I know some Malzahn fans will be like, well, that's subjective, which like no shit it is. But like nonetheless, it's like I'll put it this way, and you could probably chalk it down to Steven Erikson just does it differently than everybody, because I've heard that a couple times. But it's like, when I generally, consume something, a piece of fiction, I generally walk in when it comes to characters. I go like, okay, who are these characters? What do they want? And why should I care about it? And it was kind of frustrating, kind of sussing that out from everyone, because it's like there's so much going on. It's like, oh man.
I think like in one thing that I've said in the past is like reading the Malazan Book of the Fallen is in some ways more like reading a history book than reading a novel, in that there's stuff that is happening around the world that is not covered in what you are reading right now. And there's stuff that happened before that is incredibly relevant, but because the Malazan Book of the Fallen covers these specific X years, like of like these specific characters, all the other stuff is just maybe mentioned on the side, but you need to understand
Yeah.
the rest of the world is happening while you are reading.
It's still
these
moving while
books.
you're reading your story. Yeah.
And it's just not covered in this specific book. So it's like reading a history of, like, I don't know, the Civil War and American Civil War, right? And
Malazan
there
may not
is
be very-
there is still stuff happening in Europe, and that does have an impact on what's going on in the Civil War. But if you're just it's just not covered here, and I think having that mindset is different from like reading a novel that has like a very clear plot structure and like everything gets like resolved at the end. It's like, no, there are people that just like wander off the page and don't show up in this book anymore, and that's because they end up in like other stories because they just like go to like a different continent or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like Erickson never really focuses on the geopolitics, which is a little annoying. Because like what? Something's happening with the Empire, and you just didn't tell me for 6 books? That's crazy. That's fine. But
I love that.
but the scope is so much bigger than Game of Thrones in the sense of like, oh yeah, we're dealing with 3 continents and their political stuff all at the same time, but we're not going to actually talk about the politics. But you're going to feel its effects of whatever's happening. So.
Yeah, I mean that's partly in like the way they split like up like stuff between Esselmont and Erickson, because once you read the novels of the Malazan Empire, you get all the stuff that just gets like mentioned like in book 9 when it's like, what?
I interspersed them. I probably shouldn't have done that for a first read through, but I did it, and I was happy with that because then I had context. Because if I would have read book 9 and read that like paragraph they give you about what's going on in the Empire, I would have been so mad. Like I went 9 books not knowing this. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
I just know there's a war, and the queen assassinated the king, or sorry, no, the empress assassinated the emperor and his not his boyfriend, sorry, his friend. And
the duo, the dynamic duo, Superman and Batman.
Except
in a lot of ways,
kind of did
Yeah.
because
Like you gotta keep reading. That's all I can say.
I feel like in a lot of ways it really helps to think of like Shadow Throne and Cotillion, or the Emperor and Cotillion. To think and Dancer, to think of them very much like Riggs and Murdo in Lethal Weapon. One of them is absolutely fucking insane, and the other one is always suffering the consequences of one of them being absolutely fucking insane, and both being absolute fucking badasses, which is also important to understand about this. But like the dynamic is very, very much the that dynamic in a lot of ways.
I had this weird conspiracy theory as I went through it and learned more that Cotillion and Shadow Throne are just Steven Erickson and Esselmont like parading through the world.
I think Biggest Bad is talking to me when they say this, but it says, I look forward to your thoughts on Perrin's youngest sister in book 2. Please make a video about it when you finish.
I think they're talking to you.
Which I definitely will. I'm hoping to make a video about Gardens of the Moon, but it probably will take a few months because I have to wrangle some people together for that. So it should be fun because my audience demanded that I do a discussion, and I cannot turn them down. So
yeah,
you're at the whim of your audience.
I'm at the whim of my audience. Yeah,
and you live to serve.
I live to serve the Samoki Dude Empire.
There you go.
I'm like the adjourn or whatever. The adjunct. Sorry, not the adjourn.
Adjunct, yeah. But to your conspiracy theory, Alex, I mean, Shadow Throne was a character played in several games by Esselmont, and Erickson has said in the past that there's situations where he did not know what like whether Shadow Throne is insane or not. That question has never been resolved, at least not for Erickson, because Esselmont never told him.
I have heard some people say that I think her name's Fellison. I heard she is. I've heard some people say she can be kind of annoying, but that's about it.
Read book 2 again. This book 3 deals much more with compassion, like I said in the general sense. Book 2 is more of, so you completely understand why she's being annoying. Can you still have compassion for her despite it? Because it's so easy for people to like just be annoyed at her character in book 2 and then completely be head over heels in love with Karsa, despite him being an objectively worse person, just because he's not annoying to them. So it's a bit of the thing there. Like everything she does in 2 makes sense. even if
there's
it's
a lot of
annoying.
like stuff going. Like Ericsson in general often has like
Yes.
discourse around like mental health
Hesitantly.
issues and how
Yes.
people interact with people with mental health challenges. And yes, someone can be in a situation where they have like very objectively very little choice to act differently, and that can be incredibly problematic when people with a lot of trauma lash out at other people for like clearly the wrong reasons. People can find this annoying, but it's very much like a conversation about like trauma and how to how people interact, how people act and while dealing with trauma.
What about
And I think it's really really well done, but
Yes, I will be reading Dead House Gates. Now,
but you already met Felicin. You remember
Yeah, I
that?
didn't spoil. I was
Yeah.
very
I was about to say, yeah. She is in like earlier in the book. She's Perrin's sister, right? If I
One
recall.
of the two. He does
One
have
of them.
two. He has two sisters, Tavor and Felicin.
who we
And
met for a
you'll meet
second in
both.
book one.
And you'll meet both in different situations in different books.
Yes.
But you like both are introduced in that one scene when Paran is on like his short like visit home before he gets sent off to by insect helicopter drop into all the mess that is happening in Gardens of the Moon.
Though, I mean, I don't understand why Matt's fantasy book reviews can kind of goon over Malzahn, but he doesn't understand what the hell he's talking about when it comes to Conan. But I won't get into that discussion.
No,
And Matt's fantasy book reviews, not Matt on books. Different people.
Matt's fans of it. I feel like the issue is that he has read the entirety of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and he's currently rereading it. But like when he talks about older books, what he does not do is do any research, and so he lacks any context. And if you have never thought about anything, never even looked up when the Conan stories were written, and you are reading like a collection of Conan stories right between like two epic fantasy books published like in the last 2 years, it will feel absolutely fucking jarring. But that's like the things, like you don't read Conan at this point like a contemporary fantasy novel. You read Conan like you would read a classic by looking at like the context, like the history. All of this other stuff is necessary to understand the story because it is so far removed from like our situation right now. And that's sort of like what is lacking there. And that's partly of like the way he does like his videos, which is all about like reading through a book, filming him like himself reading the last page and giving you his like immediate thoughts. So it is sort of like a function of his style and his approach to making videos that makes it basically impossible for him to have like an actual worthwhile discussion of books like the Conan stories, because there you need that
think it's
context.
stupid. But Demodrek, I don't know. I'm aiming towards either October or November when I put it out. Maybe I won't put it out in October because it's generally when I do all my horror stuff. But I mean, I don't mind recording it in October. I do have a couple people. Well, I have Raph here. I'm definitely gonna have him on. But I have a couple people in mind to have on. I just need to wrangle everyone together for and decide on a day. So we'll see when that happens. Hopefully it won't be too long from now. But it is August, so I don't know. It's thinking real far ahead here. Maybe I can try and sneak it in September, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know yet.
All right, guys, I'm gonna slowly drop out because it is.
Yeah, man.
Take
a rest, my friend. You're on a long trip.
Yeah, and it was like bands starting to play at noon and ending at like 3 a.m. So
Well, it's been nice to chat with you, Raph.
Yeah, it was.
It's always good hearing from you, Raph.
Yeah, see you guys around. Yeah, I'll just try to get some sleep and find a new phone charger tomorrow morning, so I'm back to like communicating with the world.
Yes.
Turns out that is important.
Yes. It's not a complete
All right.
hermit.
See you guys. Have fun.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
I'm probably not going to be on very much longer either, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
And then number 2.
Yeah, it'll probably be a little bit before. So yeah, not in the future. This is definitely not the conversation about Malzahn. This is definitely just talking shit here on a stream.
It just keeps coming up.
It just keeps coming up because, well, Alex and Raph are big Malzahn fans, and I just, I read the first book for the first time, so. But yeah. But you know what? Raph makes a good point. I remember my friend. I have a friend. His name's. Do I want to say it? I don't know if Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews is ever going to watch this. So whatever. You know what? I'll just say it. Jason. Sorry, but yeah, my friend Jason's like, he said something to the effect of like, he thinks that Matt's Fantasy Book reviews are painful, and he said it hurts his balls or something like. I'll have to find it.
That's a crazy quote.
I just fucking mangled it when I saw it. I just laughed my ass off. I thought it was hilarious. New book about Area X. Another one? Jesus. All right, sorry. Let me see if I can find it. Matt's Fantasy.
I added. You made a video just the other day about the underrated books that aren't talked about or something on BookTube. So
Are you talking about me or
yeah, you.
Oh, yeah.
So I added all the books you mentioned. I added it to like wish lists on Amazon. So
very good. I'm glad to hear that because I want more people to. I was actually thinking about because I talked about Black Leopard Red Wolf the other day. I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, man, I think the Malzahn fans would really enjoy the Dark Star trilogy because there's only 2 of them out right now. It hasn't been completed yet. There's only one more, and then we'll be set, hopefully. But I think because a lot of people mention Malzahn is kind of like a puzzle, and that's kind of how I view the Dark Star books, which is Black Leopard, Red Wolf, and Moonwitch, Spider King, and the third one will whenever that comes out. But I think like the Malzahn fans would appreciate the kind of, or Gene Wolfe fans especially. I mean, I found.
Gene Wolfe hurts my head. He somehow has a way smaller page count than Malazan, and yet in that smaller page count, it has me more confused than any of the Malazan books ever did. Like, if it wasn't for Alzalbo Soup podcast that I listen to on Spotify, I would even make a review. I'd be like, I don't know what's going on, so I'm not even gonna bother.
To be fair, it's weird. I've bounced off of Gene Wolfe twice, and I love Marlon James. I wouldn't say he's quite as dense as Wolf is. I don't know how to do this. I'm actually, like I said, I'm hoping to make a video about how to read the Dark Star trilogy. I've been meaning to do it for the past like a year, but I just haven't gotten around to it because of just so much stuff going on.
Yeah. Life gets in the way of things.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, life just gets in the middle of things. But it's just, but yeah, I think like if Malzahn's if they like that kind of puzzle like quality of Malzahn, which I've heard that, which I won't harp on about my thoughts on Malzahn at the moment, but I think they would appreciate that.
Yeah.
At least I hope so.
And there's another one you said on there that was a Western. I forget what it was called, but you said it was heavily inspired by Blood Meridians. Like, oh well, that's definitely on the TBR for sure.
Yeah, it's well, I think the Western, it was All Things Left Wild, which is definitely McCarthy inspired. You'll start reading, you'll be like, this is familiar.
Yeah.
Though it's not as dark as Blood. It gets pretty dark, but it's not Blood Meridian, which is like,
Yeah.
I don't know if anything's quite as gnarly as that.
So far, no.
But I really like yeah, it's a good book. And also I'm friends with the guy. Not why I added it there, but it did help. So it also helps that no one talks about it on YouTube. Though if you want something kind of like Blood Meridian, let me see if I can find it actually real quick. Where is it? Where is it? It was right here. Where did I put it? There it is. Okay, let me get it out. Only Killers and Thieves, which could have been on the underrated books as well. Could have been on that video, but I just didn't get it. But Only Killers and Thieves by Paul Haworth. Very Blood Meridian inspired. Very similar, like unflinching look at like genocide.
Guess I'm adding that to the TBR as well.
takes place in Australia though, so there's a lot of Australian slang. But it's
Kangaroos getting beheaded.
very creepy villain in here as well. It's a very good book. I really enjoyed it. Well, maybe enjoy's the wrong word, but
that's how I feel when I talk about the Prince of Nothing. I'm like, I can't say I enjoyed my time. I'll say I was enthralled.
I'm glad I read it.
like every time I go to talk about those types of books with people, I'm always like, I can't say that I enjoyed it, but I was enthralled. And if you like it, or if you're into it, you'll really be into it. And if you don't like it, I also completely understand.
Yeah, it's kind of how I am with Blood Meridian. I'm like, look, I get if you don't like it. That's fine. Like Mike's book reviews, like he didn't care for Blood Meridian. I'm like, I get it. Yeah. I get it. Like it's dense. It's not the most approachable thing in the world.
Yeah, it's not even really like a character-driven thing either. Like the characters don't really grow. There's no, even the kid doesn't really change that much. So it's a little bit, but yeah, it's not really about that. It's more just living in that darkness and listening to the judge go off on his tangents.
That was another thing with Matt's fantasy book reviews that really pissed. It didn't really piss me off so much as his Conan review, because again, I'm like, look, it's Blood Meridian. I get why people don't like it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I just don't care for Matt's fantasy book reviews. I think a lot of his reviews are very shallow.
Yeah, I've listened to a few of them. I think Blood Meridian was one of them where he said, "Oh, this bad," and then he said Conan was bad, and then I don't know. He doesn't really go into why. Just kind of says it is. I find that.
I'll just say in his Conan review, he's like, "Oh, this feels like something that was written for like 14-year-old boys." And I'm just sitting there because I hate watched it one night with some friends of mine. Because, sometimes you do that. It happens. And he fucking says that without a lick of irony. And I'm just sitting there baffled. And I'm just like, yes, Matt. That's who it was freaking written for. I just clicked off. I'm like, actually, I didn't click off. I watched the whole thing because I'm like, I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to endure this.
So you did the New Jedi Order Embrace of Pain.
I'm just like, this. It was just so like, oh, okay. But yeah, it was such a terrible. Because he's all like, oh, it's a power fantasy, and just the laziest criticisms you could throw at Conan.
I've tried to get a lot better at critiquing things and trying to separate what I just personally don't like versus an objective flaw in the writing. So I'm not the most articulate guy, but I try.
I do not think that Gardens of the Moon is a 5-star book, but that's just me. Maybe if I complete the series and go back, I'll be like, oh, genius, but
I hear that's part of the effect. I haven't done a reread yet because I refuse to do it till at least the prequel trilogy is complete, and then I'll do a reread because they're long.
I've heard a couple people say that where they'll read it again and it'll be like, genius. I hear the second read is like completely different because you piece everything together much faster and you're like, oh my god, this is absolute cinema, but and I'm just like, maybe that'll happen, but I'm just like, that is not a 5-star book. I'm sorry. Some people might think it's a 5-star book, and that's great, but I do not think it is a 5-star book, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't. I never really do the star ratings for books and shows and stuff. I usually just kind of do like an overall like net positive or net negative or net neutral. If there's equally negative and good parts of it, then it's fine. And if there's more good than bad, then it's good. And if it's more bad than good, then I'm gonna throw the book across the room. So
I've been joking about this with some friends, but I'm like, yo, if Krupp wasn't in Gardens of the Moon, I probably would have quit.
well, book 3 you'll have a lot of fun then.
Oh man, yeah. I'm like, I heard he's not in book 2, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, well, it's because it's on a completely different continent.
Damn it.
Yeah, I think you get used to 2, where it's like a whole new thing, and then they shove you back to familiar territory with 3, and it's just like instantly easier to get into it because you're like, oh, I've been here before. I know these. I know these people. I'm vibing. I'm back in.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's just, oh man, like,
Hey, everybody watches things here and there.
hey, sometimes you got to do that, you gotta. I try not to be negative on booktube. I rather talk about books that
Yeah,
I think are
same.
interesting. I mean, I do think it can be educational to talk about a book you didn't like. I do negative reviews from time to time.
I think there are ways to do that.
I generally prefer to, like, I don't cover stuff like Fourth Wing because, like, I know I'm probably not going to like that. And I feel it would be very disingenuous if I did a review of.
For the same reason I don't review any Disney Star Wars show or book that comes out, which would easily get me more views, but I know how I'll feel about it. So why am I going to just bring negativity in the world unnecessarily?
Yeah, exactly. But it's just kind of, yeah, but I watched that Matt's book reviews. I'm just like, this is just like, did he fucking like read an AI before? Like, what are the criticisms about Conan the Barbarian? And then fucking Chat GBT just shot him up, and he just unironically shot him out, hook, line, and sinker. And I'm just like, oh, it was pain. It was painful to watch. I do not recommend that review. It is a terrible, terrible review.
It's what it sounds like. If I want to get angry, you want me to watch that review.
Oh, sure. I mean, you might even agree with some of that because I know you've been kind of, you're kind of like, there's some parts of this that are kind of cheesy, and it is very melodramatic at times. I'm not, and there are.
I appreciate Conan for what it is, and I'm just saying, like, it's not even Conan's fault. It's just the fault of when I was born. A lot of the tropes that originated with Conan, I've seen in other places, so it affects my enjoyment of that particular story. But that's not Howard's fault. That's just the time period I grew up in's fault. So, but he did it first, so it's not a flaw of his writing.
Yeah, it's just kind of, oh, hello there. Is that, I don't know who this is. Hello there. Probably not going to be on for too much longer because, I have other things I'm wanting to get to before the end of the day.
And we have gone on for 3 hours, so.
Yeah, we've been going for like 3 hours, but yeah, no, it's but yeah, no, it's not a good review. I don't recommend it. If you want to piss me off, go like, what review really illuminated my problems with Conan the Barbarian? Matt Fancy book review. If you said that, I'm just gonna be like, you're dumb. Shut down the conversation. I'll just be like, you're wrong, and just leave. No, I'm kidding.
Just blocks me on Instagram.
I am being a little facetious there, but I would be a little like, my god, there are better reviews of Conan than that one. But anyway, I'm probably gonna wrap this up. Alex, thanks for coming in, and Raph, you're gone now, but thank you for coming in here.
Thanks for having me.
It's always fun hanging out, and I'm sure you'll have opinions on the road. You can probably DM me about it, but thank you everyone who showed up, even you lurkers, especially. Appreciate you guys. I'm probably gonna take off because we've been going on for a little while. And I'm just gonna get going then. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Well, until the next time I do this, which you never know. But anyway, until next time, hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.
And now we sit it. No, not leads.
And it's.
Oh, hold on. I haven't ended it yet.
All right, we're still
Okay.
going.
Now